Chapter 332. Sober. He was in a coma. His consciousness swayed back and forth between the dead silence and the shimmer. The sound of the helicopter rotors whistling in his ears was intermittent. The pain spread from his heart to the top of his head and to the soles of his feet. The intense pain surrounded his body and then he became numb. The formless energy seemed to be doing its best to disintegrate his body, as if it was trying to make his body as fragmented as possible, turning it into a bloody mess. Gu Xingyun could not move. But his consciousness was struggling desperately. One step further was life. One step backward was death. Gu Xingyun opened his eyes again. In his sight there was still a dim cabin. The light in the cabin was faint, so everything in his sight became blurred. Blood gushed from the corners of his mouth. It was warm and then cold. Gu Xingyun was in a trance. The faint light in the cabin seemed so dazzling. The intense pain and numbness occupied all his consciousness. His mind was in a trance as if he would fall into eternal darkness at any time. Gu Xingyun subconsciously grabbed the seat beside him and bit the tip of his tongue with all his strength. His lips and teeth were numb. He misjudged his strength and directly bit his tongue. The blood poured into his mouth and was spat out by him. Different from the sharp pain in his body, his will was suddenly refreshed. "You're awake." A voice sounded in his ear. In some blurred vision, Gu Qianchuan's face gradually became clear. Gu Xingyun looked at him. His face was completely distorted in the severe pain, looking ferocious and horrible. But his eyes were extremely bright. They were indifferent and vigilant, like two cold stars inlaid on a ghost face. Gu Qianchuan was also looking at Gu Xingyun. His face was calm and his eyes were calm. Only calmness. The helicopter roared to the northwest at a high altitude. The two most powerful men in Kunlun City looked at each other quietly. "You're badly hurt." Gu Qianchuan took the initiative to speak after a long time. His voice lost its former respect. When he spoke, he turned his head and looked in another direction. Gu Xingyun could not see his eyes. His mouth was still sweet and warm. His voice was a little vague and short. "Where are you?" This question was somewhat inexplicable. Gu Qianchuan understood what he meant. "We're on our way back to Kunlun City." Kunlun City. Back to Kunlun City? Gu Xingyun's fuzzy consciousness was suddenly startled, and he became sober again. "No. We can't go back." Gu Qianchuan was stunned and looked at Gu Xingyun in confusion. Gu Xingyun's breathing became more and more rapid and he just kept repeating, "You can't go back." Kunlun City. That was the most glorious achievement of his life, and it was also the place where he felt the most at ease. But in his current state, Kunlun City was the most dangerous place for him. Gu Qianchuan gradually understood. He vaguely knew why Gu Xingyun didn't want to go back. Because Li Shi was still in Kunlun City. Li Shi. It was the wife of the governor who had hardly walked out of Kunlun City for more than 20 years. As the first elder of Kunlun City, Gu Qianchuan knew very well that the relationship between Gu Xingyun and Li Shi was not harmonious. But he didn't expect their relationship to be so stiff. When Gu Xingyun was seriously injured, he did not dare to go home. What was he afraid of? Gu Qianchuan suddenly felt pity for Gu Xingyun. He did not understand the meaning of such a couple. "If we don't return to the Kunlun realm, are we going to Yuzhou?" Gu Qianchuan looked at Gu Xingyun and asked. Gu Xingyun suddenly fell silent. He was the war god of Jianghu state, but it was even more dangerous to go to Yuzhou when he was seriously injured and powerless than to go back to Kunlun City. He trembled and reached out his hand. His stiff and numb arm struggled to reach into his arms and pulled out a button from the interlayer of his clothes. The buttons were small and delicate, and they shone with a strange light in the dark cabin. Gu Xingyun seemed to want to crush the button, but his palm shook so the button fell to the ground and rolled in front of Gu Qianchuan. Gu Xingyun's scattered eyes suddenly condensed. Gu Qianchuan narrowed his eyes. The roar of the rotor still filled the cabin. But the atmosphere in the cabin suddenly became a little strange. Gu Qianchuan picked up the button in front of him and looked at Gu Xingyun thoughtfully. Gu Xingyun quietly looked at Gu Qianchuan. After a long silence, he said lightly, "Give it to me." Gu Qianchuan did not move. He looked at Gu Xingyun for a long time and suddenly asked, "Why?" The meaning of this sentence was simple, but the meaning behind it was unusual. "Why? Why should I give it to you? If you die, I will be the city governor of Kunlun City." So what? Kunlun City was not harmonious inside. The intrigue between the city governor and the first elder was not a secret. Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan knew what each other wanted. In such an environment there was no need to hide. Gu Qianchuan just wanted to ask why. This was not a fallout, but if Gu Xingyun could not give an answer, the consequences would be more serious than a fallout. I can't die. Gu Xingyun said calmly, and his face grew darker. Situ Cangyue's setting sun almost completely hit him. He could escape and let Gu Qianchuan take him away from Lin An, which was an overdraft of his potential. In his current state, let alone Gu Qianchuan, even an ordinary person could easily kill him. But the look in his eyes became calm, even a little calm. Why? Gu Qianchuan still asked this question, but it had a different meaning. If I die, do you have enough strength to guard Kunlun City? Gu Xingyun laughed sarcastically. Now your strength is barely in the top 10 of the holy list, not to mention the divine list. You can't guard Kunlun City after my death. His words were blunt and merciless. A touch of anger flashed in Gu Qianchuan's eyes. The current result is the best for you. Gu Xingyun's eyes were dim, his breath was getting weaker, and his breathing became heavy. I'm seriously injured, but I won't die. I'm not sure whether I will become the second summer solstice. During my recovery time, the power of Kunlun City is in your hands. As long as I don't die, it is a deterrent to the outside world. Kunlun City ahem. Kunlun City will always exist. What's wrong with this result? He looked at Gu Qianchuan and mocked. With your current strength, you won't even be a match for Jianghu of the Wang family of Beihai in a life-and-death battle. Can you guard Kunlun City by yourself? The biggest disagreement between him and Gu Qianchuan was the power of Kunlun City. He did not want to see Kunlun City disappear and be ruined. Gu Qianchuan did not want to either. Therefore, the negotiations between the two were quite sincere. What you said makes sense. Gu Qianchuan pondered for a long time before nodding. He handed the button in his hand to Gu Xingyun. Gu Xingyun had no strength to crush the button, so he simply put it in his mouth and bit it, swallowing it with the cool liquid in the button. Gu Qianchuan watched Gu Xingyun take the medicine. The effect of the medicine was immediate. Although Gu Xingyun was still weak, his breathing gradually began to become stable. Gu Qianchuan knew what Gu Xingyun was eating. Strictly speaking, it was also an immortality potion. It was just an immortality potion belonging to the Jianghu state government. This was the immortality potion that Jianghu state traded with the Wang family of Beihai when they first developed the immortality potion hundreds of years ago. Jianghu state decomposed the immortality potion and then added a large number of precious medicinal materials. Finally, it became the healing holy medicine that Gu Xingyun took. This thing was also based on vitality, but it would not prolong life. Instead, it would infinitely expand the recovery speed of injury. This was the exclusive holy medicine of the war god of Jianghu state. Although there was only one drop in a button, it was equivalent to a life. What are you going to do? Gu Qianchuan looked at Gu Xingyun, who became dizzy again, and his eyes flickered. What will you do for me? Gu Xingyun twitched the corner of his mouth and said in a low tone. This time he was really seriously injured. Gu Xingyun did not know how long he could recover. He was not even sure if he could maintain the combat capability of the invincible realm. During the period of his recovery, even if he was reluctant, he had to hand over the power of Kunlun City to Gu Qianchuan. Gu Qianchuan would certainly not let him stay outside when he had the power. During the period of his recovery, he was basically under house arrest by Gu Qianchuan. One day, when his combat capability was restored, if Gu Qianchuan did a good job, it would not be so easy for him to take back the power of the city lord. Kunlun City was a city, but it had a short time to rise and its foundation was insufficient. It looked like a family. In the family, the city lord was not necessarily the strongest. The key was who held the power of the family. I have a manor in Yingzhou with a good environment. If you don't want to stay in Kunlun City, you can go there to recover. Gu Qianchuan was silent for a while and whispered. His tone was extremely sincere. Gu Qianchuan twitched the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, okay. He really did not want to stay in Kunlun City. When he thought of Kunlun City without the combat capability, he would feel fear. Instead of that, it was better to accept Gu Qianchuan's house arrest, which seemed to be out of good intentions. What else do you want? Gu Qianchuan asked seriously. Gu Xingyun thought for a moment and said calmly, it's boring to be alone. Let Qingqing accompany me. Li Qingqing. Gu Xingyun and Li Shi's daughter. She was also Li Shi's reverse scale. As long as Li Qingqing was controlled by his side, Gu Xingyun would not worry about what Li Shi would do. Gu Qianchuan did not need to worry either. So he nodded and said with a smile, very thoughtful. Gu Xingyun nodded. He seemed to want to say something, but his spirit could no longer support him and he passed out again. The helicopter flew across the night sky to the northwest. Over the mountains and the Great Lake, the air gradually became cold. When Gu Xingyun opened his eyes again, Kunlun Mountain, which seemed to be unchanged for thousands of years, was already in front of him. He regained some spirit. But the strong sense of weakness became more and more obvious so that he struggled to sit up. Have we arrived? Gu Xingyun asked in a hoarse voice. His brain was confused and he had a terrible headache. Yes. Gu Qianchuan nodded. I have arranged it. Qingqing has taken a helicopter to Yinzhou an hour ago. Good. Gu Xingyun nodded. Looking out of the window at Kunlun City, which had appeared in his sight, he felt a little more confident. The helicopter landed at the small airport of Kunlun City. Gu Qianchuan quietly helped Gu Xingyun back to his residence. It was cold in Kunlun. The stove in Gu Xingyun's residence was very hot. The room was warm and comfortable. Gu Xingyun sat down on the sofa, gasped and said faintly, I'll stay here for a few more days. After this matter is completely resolved, I'll immediately set off for Yinzhou. This matter was undoubtedly about cooperating with the Wang family of Beihai to assassinate Li Honghe. If Li Honghe died in Lin, and nothing would happen. If Li Honghe did not die, it would cause an uproar. Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan left halfway. They did not even know the result of the assassination. Go ahead. Gu Xingyun glanced at Gu Qianchuan and said indifferently. Gu Qianchuan nodded and turned to leave. Gu Xingyun sat on the sofa and looked at Gu Qianchuan's back. His eyes became deep as if all the temperature had disappeared. What if he temporarily handed over the power of Kunlun City? In this battle with Situ Tsangyue, what if the murderous weapon-setting sun fell into Gu Qianchuan's hands? As long as he could recover, both the murderous weapon and the power would be his. Gu Xingyun leaned on the sofa, closed his eyes and muttered to himself, still too young. As soon as Gu Qianchuan stepped out of the door, a beautiful white shadow appeared in front of him. Gu Qianchuan was stunned. Looking at the woman in front of him, his eyes flickered. The woman's face was extremely beautiful. She wore a white dress and had picturesque eyebrows. Her hair was neatly combed and soft. The long waterfall-like hair seemed to be mixed with snowflakes, and the ends of her hair were a little white. However, this did not weaken her charm. Instead, it made her look more deadly attractive. Heavenly beauty was a perfect description for the woman in front of him. She was beautiful to the extreme, like a colorful ink painting spread out in the snow, unforgettable. Sister-in-law. Gu Qianchuan was silent for a while and said hello with a smile. The woman in front of him, at least for now, was still the hostess of Kunlun City, whether in name or in fact. Although she had never expressed any opinion on the internal affairs of Kunlun City, no one would question her identity. She was the wife of the governor of Kunlun City and the only wife of Gu Xingyun. Where is Qingqing? Li Shi stood in front of Gu Qianchuan and asked straightforwardly. Her voice was crisp and could even be said to be pleasing to the ear. She spoke very quickly, but the words that came out of her mouth were always strange. Her tone seemed to be very impatient, but there was no emotion in her voice. She was not stiff and mechanical. It was an almost empty numbness. This was obviously a peerless beauty that could not be described with any gorgeous words, but there was no aura. Under the gorgeous appearance, there was only emptiness and numbness. I arranged for Qingqing to go out to play. Gu Qianchuan smiled and said, This is the meaning of the governor. Where is Qingqing? Li Shi asked again. Gu Xingyun was calm and just shook his head. He whispered, The governor is inside. He stepped aside to make way. Li Shi hesitated for a moment, but still stepped into Gu Xingyun's courtyard. Gu Qianchuan turned his head and looked at Li Shi's white dress fluttering in the wind and snow. His eyes were playful and cold. Gu Xingyun did not dare to return to Kunlun City because he was seriously injured. He did not dare to return here until he controlled Li Qingqing. Undoubtedly he was afraid of his wife, Li Shi. He was not on good terms with Gu Xingyun. But even so, he would rather believe himself, who wanted to compete with him for the control of Kunlun City, than Li Shi. Husband and wife? Oh, what kind of husband and wife were they? Li Shi walked into the room from the courtyard. Gu Xingyun still leaned on the sofa. He just glanced at Li Shi casually and was too lazy to move his body. Where is Qingqing? Li Shi asked directly. In Kunlun City she almost never talked to Gu Xingyun. Even if she occasionally spoke, she was straightforward. Qingqing should go out and have a walk. It is not good for her to stay in Kunlun City all the time. I should have time in the next few years. I will take her with me and hand her over to me. Gu Xingyun said indifferently. Li Shi looked at Gu Xingyun quietly. You are hurt, she said. Her tone was not the worry of a wife, nor the pleasure of an enemy. It was plain, empty and numb, which made people feel uncomfortable. Seriously injured. Gu Xingyun smiled. His eyes were a little cold and his tone was a little angry. The full blow of setting Sunday, ha 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 ha, Sidu Tsangyue, that bitch. Bitch. Li Shi's delicate body shook quietly. The full blow of the murderous weapon setting sun. She knew very well what it meant. Many years ago, she had personally witnessed another murderous weapon bombarding another woman's body at close range. In the monstrous sword intent and flowing light, the murderous weapon was broken, and the invincible silence was destroyed. That murderous weapon was called the Infinite Sky. The power of setting sun was not as good as the Infinite Sky. But in the same way, Gu Xingyun's strength was not as good as the woman who shattered the Infinite Sky. Will you die? Li Shi asked calmly. I don't want to die. Gu Xingyun shook his head. Li Shi finally understood why her daughter left Kunlun City. She raised the corner of her mouth slightly, revealing a sneer and mockery with obvious emotions. So you let Gu Qianchuan take Qingqing away? You control Qingqing because you are afraid that I will kill you when you are seriously injured? If you kill me, Qingqing will die. Gu Xingyun looked at Li Shi calmly. Are you willing to kill me? Li Shi's eyes suddenly burst with anger and contempt. Do you know what you are doing? You threaten your wife with your own daughter. Gu Xingyun, what kind of man are you? You are a bastard. Hypocritical and disgusting. You don't deserve to be a man at all. Bastard, disgusting, not worthy to be a man. In more than 20 years this was the longest sentence Li Shi had said to Gu Xingyun. But this sentence was like the sharpest knife, penetrating the anger and resentment that Gu Xingyun had suppressed for many years. His elegant face became distorted in an instant, and he suddenly stood up from the sofa. Li Shi was motionless. Gu Xingyun's eyes were red, and he pinched Li Shi's slender white neck. I am a bastard? I don't deserve to be a man? Then who do you say is a man? Say it. B*TCH, you are also a B*TCH. Slap. Gu Xingyun, who was like a crazy devil, slapped Li Shi's pretty face hard. Who is the man in your heart? Li Kuangtu? He had a good time King Yu, didn't he? I heard that you and Situ Tsangyue served him together? Shameless B*TC. How am I inferior to her? Say it, tell me. Li Shi was slapped to the ground. Her face was red and swollen, but she still raised her head and looked at Gu Xingyun with disdain. That was a kind of arrogance, although embarrassed, but still unwilling to compromise and give in. Gu Xingyun seemed to be familiar with the arrogance. At that time, those years, he had personally sent this woman to the side of the young chosen one. She stood so proudly beside him, looking down at everyone like a goddess, including Gu Xingyun himself. Gu Xingyun's eyes became scarlet, and he stared at Li Shi. Are you a man? Li Shi wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and her eyes were full of contempt. I'm not a man? Gu Xingyun laughed wildly. Don't you know whether I am a man or not? Don't you know how Qingqing came to be? Li Shi's face was pale. She stood up tremblingly and said coldly, the thing I regret most is to give birth to Qingqing for you. Slap. The furious Gu Xingyun slapped Li Shi's face again. Regret? He sneered and looked at Li Shi, who fell to the ground. You regret giving birth to my daughter. Don't you regret giving birth to Li Kuangtu's daughter? Don't forget that you killed that bastard and Li Kuangtu with your own hands. Regret? What qualifications do you have to regret? You bitch. Ha! Li Shi sneered and took a breath. You gave your woman to your opponent and willingly wore a green hat for many years. Are you proud? I am a bitch? Why didn't you say that when you asked me to get close to him? What do you have to be proud of? As long as you are alive, there will always be green on your head. What are you proud of? What am I proud of? What am I proud of? Gu Xingyun's face was pale and blood gushed from the corner of his mouth again, but he became excited. He suddenly stretched out his hand, grabbed Li Shi's hair, and dragged her out of the window. Outside the window was the constant wind and snow. Dawn broke. Kunlun City was shimmering. Look. Gu Xingyun pointed out the window. These are all mine. Kunlun City is mine and you are also mine. I have the entire special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. What am I proud of? What do you think I am proud of? Everything in exchange for a green hat. Is it really worth being proud of? He is dead. Gu Xingyun looked furious and said with a grim smile, he is already dead. You're the one who killed him. All my shame has been washed clean. Li Shi fell to the ground. Her cheeks were swollen and her face was bleak. That was despair and numbness without any hope. This is what you should do. You shouldn't insult me with these things. Gu Xingyun kept gasping. He looked at Li Shi sitting on the ground and his eyes became a little dazed. He squatted down in front of Li Shi and reached out to touch Li Shi's face. All the irritation completely disappeared from his face, and his voice was indescribably gentle. Did I hurt you? You shouldn't have angered me. Li Shi looked at Gu Xingyun with empty eyes. This poor and hateful woman had nothing to say. As early as when she was taken into this snow mountain by her father, she had no choice. One wrong step led to many wrong steps. Until today, when she suddenly looked back at her own way, she found that all the things she had experienced along the way, in the bright and lonely silence, were all sins. As long as you are willing to be obedient, your father and Qingqing will be fine. Do you know? Gu Xingyun gently touched Li Shi's red and swollen face. The dark world has not been peaceful recently. Gu Qinshuan's strength is too poor. When necessary, you have to fight for Kunlun City and do what I should do. Can you do it? Li Shi nodded numbly. Go ahead. Gu Xingyun said with a smile, if you have the chance, kill Situ Tsangyue for me. All bitches deserve to die, right? Li Shi did not speak, stood up and walked out numbly. Gu Xingyun narrowed his eyes and looked at her back. Li Shi's long hair fluttered, and the ends of her hair seemed to be white with snowflakes. The beauty had white hair. Gu Xingyun was in a trance and laughed at himself. They didn't depend on each other until their hair turned white. The Prime Minister knew that he was still holding his sword. Such a couple, even if they were rich and powerful, what he got from her was only emptiness and loneliness. Li Shi opened the door. It was early morning outside the window of Kunlun City. Chapter 333. If there was a return, there would naturally be a departure. When Dongqing Wudi, who had stayed up all night, pushed open the door of the study and walked into the living room, breakfast had been served in the dining room. Bai Qingqian put a bowl of clear porridge on the table, looked at Dongqing Wudi coming over, smiled gently and said softly, let's eat first. Okay. Dongqing Wudi took the porridge and took a sip. He frowned slightly, and his eyes were full of solemnity. Wang Qianzong and Gu Xingyun appeared in Lin'an. Li Honghe was seriously injured and attacked. Li Honghe did not die. Overnight, this piece of intelligence, which was not top secret, had flown to every corner of Zhongzhou State. The patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai and the contemporary god of war of Zhongzhou State attacked the former god of war of Zhongzhou State. The most important thing was that the person who was attacked was injured but not dead. Everyone knew what this meant. Dongqing Wudi received the news from Lin, and almost immediately. When he received the news, Dongqing Wudi's first reaction was to leave for Lin, and immediately. However, when he was preparing the helicopter, he returned to the study and held a core meeting of the Dongqing clan. In other words, it was a core network meeting of the giant group of Zhongzhou State. Dongqing Wudi was one of the 9 giants standing at the top of Zhongzhou State. As the actual #1 person in the military, he was ahead of the old man of the Zhou family in terms of real power and ranking of giants. Therefore, after Dongqing Wudi officially became a giant in Zhongzhou State 2 years ago, the supreme leadership of the giant group had been transferred to the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Wudi could now be said to be the spiritual flag of the entire giant group. He should hold a core network meeting of the giant group. The meeting lasted most of the night. Dongqing Wudi, who was sitting at the table, looked solemn and gloomy. The result is not good? Bai Qingqian glanced at Dongqing Wudi and asked softly, what did they say? She was the top leader of Guangdong province of Zhongzhou State and one of the absolute core figures in the giant group. However, in the past few days in the Dongqing clan, Bai Qingqian seemed to be willing to be a good wife and mother, taking good care of Dongqing Wudi and Dongqing Hongguang. She paid no attention to the outside world and didn't even attend the core meeting last night. The corners of Dongqing Wudi's mouth twitched and he said slowly, some people think that we shouldn't offend the Wang family of Beihai. On the contrary, we should use this opportunity to do Wang Tianzong a favor so that we can get more bargaining chips when we trade with the Border Control Corps. A cold anger flashed in Bai Qingqian's eyes. What's the reason? She asked. Reason? Dongqing Wudi sneered. They think that Tianlan's situation is too dangerous to be worth the full investment of the giant group. Moreover, the identity of Rushi's fiancée doesn't seem to carry enough weight in their eyes. The old bastard of the Liu family directly took advantage of his seniority at the meeting and suggested that I carefully consider the engagement between Rushi and Tianlan. He even proposed the specific candidate. What was that? Does he really think he's the same as when he was still in office? Who did he propose? Bai Qingqian's tone was calm, without the slightest joy or anger. Dongqing Wudi hesitated, glanced at his wife and whispered, it's Wang Jingxin. Bai Qingqian's pupils suddenly contracted. Wang Jingxin, the most famous backbone of the young generation of the Wang family of Beihai in recent years. In the early years, his reputation was even higher than Wang Xingxiao's. Wang Jingxin was not a martial arts genius, but a political figure that the entire Wang family of Beihai had high hopes for. He was the best choice in terms of boldness, vision, and wisdom. Now he was regarded by many as the person who might finally reach the top in Jianghu state after 20 years. Wang Jingxin was the oldest of the young generation of the Wang family of Beihai. He was not from the lineal branch represented by Wang Tianzong, nor was he from the gradually growing power of Wang Qinglei's branch. Instead, he came from another branch whose power was not obvious and was extremely low-key. He was 32 years old, one of the governors of Jianghu province, and the top leader of Lin and the provincial capital of Jianghu province. With such a status, Wang Jingxin's existence could be said to be the focus of attention. Zhou Yuanshan, Dongqing Qiuqi of the Giant Group, Wang Jingxin of the Southeast Group. In every era, there were a few strong figures who began to show themselves in the political circle at a young age. They were young enough to be on an equal footing with the older generation. They were the focus of attention and were naturally regarded as the future leaders of Jianghu state. And Wang Jingxin was the most dazzling one in these people's eyes. Although he was 10 years older than Dongqing Rushi, if Dongqing Rushi really married him, it could not be said that she was marrying from a lower position. Bai Qingqian was not angry. Instead, she thought carefully for a while and then said lightly, "In this way, the Wang family of Beihai has already begun to act." She paused and continued, "It's very likely that after the failure of last night's action, Wang Tianzong has already given some instructions." Dongqing Wudi nodded. He agreed with his wife's statement. The power of the giant group was extremely huge. On paper it was even not weaker than the two giants, the Prince Group and the Southeast Group. However, the groups composed of these giants were extremely loose. Unless it was a matter of life and death, they rarely had the same voice. The Lu family was the backbone of the giant group, but the family had a lot of cooperation with the Wang family of Beihai and was very close to some important figures of the Wang family of Beihai. The Lu family definitely did not mention Wang Jingxin at the meeting on a whim, nor did they make fun of Wang Jingxin. The Lu family mentioned Wang Jingxin, which meant that the Wang family of Beihai really had such an appeal now. They just used a more euphemistic action to test the attitude of the Dongqing clan. "What about your attitude?" Bai Qingqian asked. To a certain extent, the Lu family's suggestion could represent a force of the giant group. On the matter of how to deal with the Li family, the Dongqing family, the Bai family, and the Zhou family had reached a consensus. But under the three pillars of the wealthy families, those backbone forces also needed to be appeased. The Dongqing clan's refusal of the Lu family's proposal was far from enough to make the Lu family split, but they must try their best to appease the Lu family. This was a necessary lesson for a leader. "I refused." Dongqing Wudi shook his head. Bai Qingqian did not speak, just looked at him quietly. Refusal was an attitude. But Bai Qingqian was not satisfied with such an attitude. Dongqing Wudi smiled helplessly and said seriously, "What do you think?" He knew Bai Qingqian very well. Bai Qingqian was known for being strong among the senior officials. When it came to Li Tianlan, her performance would only be more intense. "Let Yuanshan suppress Wang Jingxin. That's my attitude," Bai Qingqian said. Yuanshan. Dongqing Wudi was a little hesitant. He had high hopes for Zhou Yuanshan, the eldest son-in-law. And if this matter succeeded, the significance would not be as simple as suppressing Wang Jingxin. "Let's see what Yuanshan thinks," Dongqing Wudi said. Bai Qingqian nodded. Compared with Wang Jingxin, Yuanshan still has an advantage in seniority. He won't refuse. "It's not a matter of seniority." Dongqing Wudi smiled bitterly. "No matter what the problem is, as long as he has the heart, it's okay." Bai Qingqian's tone was concise. Dongqing Wudi was silent. Heart. This word represented many things. Could be said to be ambition or friendship. The focus of all things was not on the engagement between Wang Jingxin and Dongqing Rushi, nor on the core meeting inside the giant group. Li Honghe was attacked and did not die. That was the real focus. Li Honghe was dead. Nothing needed to be mentioned. Even the Dongqing clan would protect Li Tianlan at that time and would not do anything extra. But Li Honghe did not die. So this matter became an opportunity for the Li family to rise again. Li Honghe's identity was too special and lofty. As the former god of war of Jianghu state, he could be said to be one of the greatest veterans and contributors in Jianghu state in recent decades. No matter how down and out the Li family was, Li Honghe was also a veteran. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City attacked him. No matter what the reality was, at least on the surface, they were challenging the system that the six of Jianghu state followed and blatantly breaking the rules. So they had to pay the price. The price could be big or small. If someone was willing to stand up for the Li family, they could definitely get a lot of chips in this matter. The academics might take action, but they had always been steady and would not stand out. And from the standpoint of the academics, it was more in their interest to protect Li Tianlan after Li Honghe's death. So the Dongqing clan was most likely to stand up for the Li family. So as soon as the attack failed and the Dongqing clan held a core meeting, the Wang family of Beihai had begun to test Dongqing Wudi's attitude through the Lu family. Bai Qingqian suggested that Zhou Yuanshan suppress Wang Jingxin. If everything went well, Wang Jingxin would definitely go further this year or next year and become the governor of Jianghu province. Bai Qingqian made it clear that she wanted Zhou Yuanshan to grab this position. It was not difficult to operate. It was the price that the Wang family of Beihai had to pay. But once Zhou Yuanshan went to Jianghu, his identity would become very different. Li Honghe was attacked and did not die. Zhongzhou state had to give Li Honghe some compensation. Once Zhou Yuanshan went there, to some extent he was no longer the future leader candidate of the giant group. Instead, he became the founder of the future political power of the Li family. This identity did not seem to change much in the short term, but in the long run, it was undoubtedly very subtle. If Li Tianlan could grow up in the future, Zhou Yuanshan would definitely become the veteran and leader of the new group, which would even go higher than when he was in the giant group. But the premise was that the Li family and Li Tianlan could grow up. Of course there were risks, but the returns would also be extremely rich. Zhou Yuanshan and Wang Jingxin had their own advantages and disadvantages, but looking at 20 years later, Zhou Yuanshan's odds of winning were not high. Their abilities might be equal, but at the most critical moment, it was difficult for him to get the strongest support in the giant group. But if he entered the Li family, it might be a different scene. So Zhou Yuanshan would certainly not refuse to go to Jianghu. As long as Dongqing Wudi agreed. What are you hesitating about? Bai Qingqian looked at Dongqing Wudi and asked. This was an extremely rare opportunity, especially for Li Tianlan. He was the young governor of Sai City and had a certain foundation in the dark world. Now he got the investment of the Flourishing Age Fund and had economic support. The future of the young people of the East Emperor Palace was promising and bright. With this opportunity he could get the most important political power. If everything went well, the Li family would have risen again in Zhongzhou state. Although their current strength was still very weak, it was already in its embryonic form. They had everything they should have, and this was all Li Tianlan's power. Bai Qingqian smiled and said softly, "You haven't decided whether to stand up for the Li family or not?" Dongqing Wudi's eyelids twitched. Bai Qingqian's voice was gentle, but the content gradually became sharp. For the Li family, this game of chess has just begun, but for the Dongqing clan, years of planning has already reached the end stage. Back then, you wanted to ask for change and wanted to break the bottleneck of the Dongqing clan, so all this happened today. How brave the Dongqing clan was. Why have you become so cowardly at a time like this, when I need you the most to protect my plan? Wudi, you are the god of massacre of Zhongzhou state. Is it because your status has become higher that your courage has become smaller? Bai Qingqian turned her head to look out of the window and said in a flat tone, I still prefer you in those days. You were high-spirited and fearless. At least at that time, you could and dared to protect some of the most important things to you. At that time we were both very young. You could fight with Gu Xingyun for me, smash Wang Tianzong's car for your family, refuse to admit defeat even when you were beaten, and dare to openly Quangtu's head with a wine bottle. You at that time were my favorite. Dongqing Wudi's eyes were in a trance. He seemed to remember the playboy's reckless life when he was young. He fought with Gu Xingyun, cursed at Wang Tianzong and despised Li Quangtu. Although he often did not get any advantage, he got Bai Qingqian because of it. I'm leaving. Bai Qingqian said softly, Sangyue seriously injured Gu Xingyun. There will be changes in the northeast soon. I must go back to stabilize the situation in Guangdong. I know you are under a lot of pressure now, so I won't try to influence you. But when Tianlan needs strength, I will not give up my persistence. Dongqing Wudi was silent. Bai Qingqian said it very clearly. He knew what her so-called persistence was. But when Li Tianlan needed support most, at the critical moment of the Li family's rise again, even if the whole world remained silent, Bai Qingqian would still stick to her persistence. Even if she had to bet everything, she would give all her strength without reservation. Some love did not need reason. Bai Qingqian took out a document from her bag and handed it to Dongqing Wudi. Dongqing Wudi took it and glanced at it. His face suddenly changed dramatically. It was a divorce agreement. And it was a divorce agreement that Bai Qingqian had signed. As long as Dongqing Wudi wrote his name on it, his years of husband and wife relationship with Bai Qingqian would end here. What does this mean? Dongqing Wudi frowned tightly. I didn't say I wouldn't do it. Tianlan will be fine. I will be fine? Bai Qingqian smiled gently. I want more than this. The corners of Dongqing Wudi's eyes kept twitching. Of course he knew what Bai Qingqian wanted. The three pillars of the giant group had already reached a consensus that they would definitely support the Li family, but no one said much about how much support they would give. But this matter was crucial. The strength of their support for the Li family was directly related to how much the Li family would benefit from this matter. There was no doubt that Bai Qingqian wanted the full support of the Dongqing clan. That was the most difficult thing for Dongqing Wudi. Qingqian, don't force me. Dongqing Wudi's voice was slow like an old man's. From his own standpoint he was naturally willing to fully support Li Tianlan. But supporting Li Tianlan and supporting the Li family were two completely different things. Although this was an opportunity for Li Tianlan, if he fully supported Li Tianlan, he would also encounter a lot of resistance. Dongqing Wudi naturally had to weigh the pros and cons. Born as a human, I always have to shoulder the responsibilities I should shoulder. Bai Qingqian's tone was indifferent. You're more than a soldier. She looked at the divorce agreement in Dongqing Wudi's hand and said slowly, I'm not threatening you with this. This is my decision after careful consideration. Wudi, sign it. After signing it, what you want to do has nothing to do with me, and what I want to do has nothing to do with you. Why torture each other? I don't want to see my husband, the only man I've ever loved in this life, gradually become the kind of person I despise the most. It's good for everyone to sign it. It has nothing to do with me. Dongqing Wudi's eyes flashed with angry sparks. What do you want to do? Qingqian, do you know what will happen once you do something? It's good to die. Bai Qingqian's voice was stiff and numb. These years I've been living a life worse than death. I've been tired for a long time. Do you know how I survived? I hate you as much as I love you. Dongqing Wudi's body shook violently. At this moment, Bai Qingqian was so sad, like a heart that was bleeding at any time placed directly in front of him. He thought of Bai Qingqian's gentleness these days and her indifference for many years. What kind of struggle was this? The divorce agreement turned into ashes in Dongqing Wudi's hands. Dongqing Wudi's eyes became determined. I'll leave for Lin, and right away. He said word by word, Yuan Shan will go to Jianghu. Trust me once. I'll do my best to fight for it. Bai Qingqian was silent for a while and nodded. You asked for a lot. Now it's time to reap the rewards. How can you not take a little risk? You did nothing. Why should Tianlan accept what he shouldn't have? How can he travel in his engagement with Rushi? Dongqing Wudi's eyes were a little weak. Bai Qingqian seemed to be satisfied with his attitude, but she was not moved. She still hated him. This was a knot that couldn't be untied. I'm leaving. Bai Qingqian walked to the door. When she was near the door, she paused and continued, I'll be back on the Mid-Autumn Festival. The sound of a helicopter whistling outside the window sounded. Bai Qingqian was about to leave. And Dongqing Wudi was about to set off. Bai Qingqian walked into the car. Dongqing Wudi got on the plane. One went south and the other went north. They didn't do it for the Li family. They did it for Li Tianlan. After today, the Li family, which had been silent in Zhongzhou state for many years, would officially set off again under the leadership of Li Tianlan. They would go to the distance and the supreme place where they used to be. There were waves and storms ahead. But there must be an end when there was a start. Readers, 670548567 brothers who haven't added me, please add me. I can't post a group number in the book review section. Chapter 334. The night passed quietly. The intoxicating fragrance with an ambiguous aura still lingered in the gradually brightening dawn. The lights were on in the spacious and comfortable bedroom, and the air conditioner was on. The man and woman hugging each other were covered with quilts. Li Tianlan held Qin Weibai tightly, breathing evenly and relaxed. Qin Weibai, who hadn't slept all night, lay quietly in Li Tianlan's arms. She opened her moist and charming eyes and stared intently at Li Tianlan's face. It was not a particularly handsome face. It was delicate and even a little ordinary. However, even in his dreams, his face appeared extremely resolute and tranquil. There seemed to be a natural sword intent between his eyebrows, which added an indescribable grace to his whole face. Qin Weibai looked at him silently. There was no admiration or adoration in her eyes, only a deep and boundless affection. Li Tianlan moved his body and turned to Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai also moved and deliberately turned her back to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's palm subconsciously reached over and grasped Qin Weibai's plump breasts. Qin Weibai turned back again. Li Tianlan still didn't wake up. But without the plump softness in his hand, his palms subconsciously slid down and fell on her perky buttocks. It was not a lustful touch. It was a grip. He didn't have much since he was a child, so he was particularly afraid of losing what he cared about. Li Tianlan's strength was great. Qin Weibai felt a little pain, but she could clearly feel Li Tianlan's care for her and a strong desire to control her from this pain. The light outside the window was getting brighter and brighter. Qin Weibai turned gently in Li Tianlan's arms and turned back. Li Tianlan's palm moved up and down as she turned. He frowned and seemed to be a little distressed. Qin Weibai finally couldn't help giggling. Her laughter was crisp and cheerful. The phone on the bedside table vibrated. Qin Weibai took out the phone and glanced at it. She thought for a while and was about to get up. Li Tianlan's palm wrapped around her again. "I'll prepare breakfast for you." Qin Weibai lay on Li Tianlan's chest, kissed him and said softly. Li Tianlan answered in a daze and let go of her hand. Qin Weibai took a deep look at him, got out of bed, took a shower and opened the closet in the bedroom. She had not set foot in Jianghu state for several years. Therefore the clothes in the wardrobe were all from a few years ago. Qin Weibai took out a white shirt, a pair of black high-waisted, wide-legged pants and a pair of high heels. With her height of 1.76 meters, she was definitely a crane in a flock of chickens. Dressed like this, her pair of long and slender legs were simply soul-stirring. If such a woman were to be glanced at by her cold and dreamy eyes, men with poor psychological quality would probably be defeated on the spot. They would not even have the courage to approach her. Li Tianlan was still asleep. Qin Weibai left the bedroom and walked out of the villa. In the morning light, the air near the lake was moist and fresh. The two villas next to each other were quiet. Everyone was resting. Qin Weibai looked down at her phone and walked into the depths of the villa area alone. There was only a slightly smaller villa in the depths of the villa district. It had 2 floors and was less than 1,000 square meters. The location was slightly worse and one could barely see a corner of the West Lake. However, there was a bamboo forest around it, so it looked extremely deep and quiet. This villa was also Qin Weibai's property. But it was written in the name of Great Master Wu Wei, so it could be regarded as Great Master Wu Wei's legacy. The morning wind blew through the bamboo forest. The bamboo leaves shook and made a slight sound. It was verdant and full of vitality. The villa was located in the middle of the bamboo forest, quiet because of the bamboo forest. The bamboo forest was rich because of the villa. They complemented each other. The exquisite door of the villa was unlocked. The smell of Chinese medicine wafted out of the villa. Qin Weibai walked into the villa. Flaming Fire, who was decocting medicine in the kitchen, looked back vigilantly at the first moment. When she saw Qin Weibai, she bowed slightly but did not come out. A middle-aged monk in gray sat in the living room. The monk wore a clean and simple gray robe, holding a string of Buddha beads in his hand, and his smile was peaceful and almost serene. There was a small box beside him. It was inconspicuous, but it was always within his reach. "Greetings, senior brother," Qin Weibai said softly. She sat down opposite the monk and straightened her back. The monk put his palms together and chuckled. "Long time no see." "Yes, long time no see." Qin Weibai looked at the string of Buddha beads in the monk's hand in a trance. After a long time she asked, "How did my foster father settle down?" "He didn't need to be settled down." The monk shook his head. "My master voluntarily dissipated between heaven and earth. There was no mourning hall, no memorial tablet and no cenotaph. Since we don't know where he came from, why bother to go there? My master never cared about what happened after his death." Qin Weibai didn't seem to know what to say, so she changed the subject. "How about senior brother Rui?" Great Master Wu Wei had 2 disciples when he was alive. One was Ruzhen and the other was Rui. After Great Master Wu Wei disappeared, Ruzhen and Rui both left Qingyun Temple. If Qin Weibai hadn't contacted Ruzhen in advance, he wouldn't have come today. "Not bad." Ruzhen smiled and said, "He should be preaching on Mount Jingfan now." "What about you?" Qin Weibai looked at Ruzhen and asked, "What's your plan?" "I want to keep walking. Let fate take its course." Ruzhen's smile remained unchanged. His eyes were calm, but his tone was polite and almost stiff. Qin Weibai seemed to have just noticed this. She sighed softly and said slowly, "Senior brother, do you blame me? If it weren't for me, my foster father might not have." "I don't blame you," Ruzhen interrupted Qin Weibai. "That's my master's own choice. But you and I are not destined to be brothers and sisters. In this case it's better to live separately." He handed the small box beside him to Qin Weibai and said softly, "This belongs to you. My master gave it to me before he left. I've completed my task. We probably won't see each other again in this life." Qin Weibai looked at the quaint and old box. She knew what was in the box. She gave it to Great Master Wu Wei that year. Now 3 years later it was back in her hands. Qin Weibai didn't touch the box. Instead, she bowed to Ruzhen and said, "Thank you, senior brother." Ruzhen shook his head and took off the Buddha beads on his wrist. The Buddha beads were extremely light, and each bead was crystal clear and round. Ruzhen gently dismantled the Buddha beads, took off the most crystal Buddha bead and put it on the tea table. The Buddha bead rolled along the tea table and fell into Qin Weibai's hand. The light was on in the hall. The light shone on the Buddha bead. It was dark with a luster like black jade. "This is..." Qin Weibai was a little confused. "This bead is called death substitution." Ruzhen said calmly, "This is the Buddha's relic burned by the Grand Master after his death. It has been kept by my master for many years. Before I went to Heaven Capital, my master gave it to me. If you're lucky enough to go to Snow Country this time, you may survive." Qin Weibai was not excited. She just stared at the Buddha beads in her hand and whispered, "Death substitution? Death substitution. Someone had to do it for him." Ruzhen was silent. There was one thing he didn't say. If it weren't for this Buddha bead, Great Master Wu Wei might have been able to survive when he touched the dragon vein root of Mount Qingyun in Lonely Mountain. Death substitution. Someone had to do it for him. Great Master Wu Wei said it was destiny. It was destiny that chose him. Ruzhen didn't think it was right. Rather than calling it destiny, it would be more accurate to call it friendship. Survive and do what you want. That's what my master wants to see. Ruzhen looked at Qin Weibai and asked, "If you can live, what do you want to do most?" The question was too simple. It was so simple that Ruzhen knew the answer. If this woman who poured everything into Li Tianlan could live, she would naturally want to spend the rest of her life with Li Tianlan. But Qin Weibai's eyes were a little confused. She clenched the Buddha bead in her white and tender hand. She was silent for a long time before she whispered, "I don't know." When she said this, her eyes were blank. There was no affection, no coldness, no wisdom, only blankness. After Snow Country, if she could live, she really didn't know what to do. "You don't know?" Ruzhen raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I thought you would choose to live with Li Tianlan until your hair turns white." "Until my hair turns white." Qin Weibai laughed self-deprecatingly. Her red lips gradually lost their color, making her look poignant and beautiful. "Do I deserve it?" she asked seriously. Ruzhen didn't know why Qin Weibai didn't deserve it. Since he didn't know, he naturally couldn't answer. He frowned, thought for a while, and then said blandly, "You don't owe him anything. Owing is owing. That's the truth. It's too hard to say it doesn't exist." Qin Weibai shook her head. Ruzhen suddenly remembered a sentence that Great Master Wu Wei had said. He had said this to military counselor before Great Master Wu Wei disappeared. And earlier than that, he had said it to Ruzhen. Ruzhen glanced at her and said slowly, "You are not you and he is not him. How can I owe him?" Qin Weibai shook her head and didn't speak. "If there is really any debt, then pay it back. There is nothing that can't be paid back," Ruzhen said. "Oh." Qin Weibai's voice was very soft, and she asked with some despair, "Give him a child. This is the greatest sacrifice. Give him a descendant. Is there anything else that can't be paid back?" Ruzhen lowered his head and tied the string of Buddha beads again, saying, "You are not a monk. It's your duty to give birth to children. Master has even named you and his child. Whether it's a boy or a girl, it will be called Li Dongqing." Qin Weibai didn't respond. Ruzhen raised his head, feeling strange. In his sight was a delicate and perfect face, but it seemed to have lost all color and spirit in an instant. Qin Weibai's face was pale. There was even some fear in her eyes. It was a scene after all the beauty was broken. It was beautiful but not beautiful. "What's wrong?" Ruzhen asked. Qin Weibai shook her head reluctantly. Her voice was very reluctant and labored. "I won't give him a child. Never." She loved Li Tianlan. But she had her own obsession. "Never." Ruzhen still wanted to ask something, but Qin Weibai had already stood up and said calmly, "Senior brother, I won't keep you. Help yourself." Ruzhen looked at her in surprise, nodded and said, "Well, I'm leaving." Flaming fire. Qin Weibai shouted, "See the guest out." Flaming fire came out of the kitchen and saw Ruzhen off. Qin Weibai sat down again and stared blankly at the small box in front of her. Fear once again surfaced in her cold and resplendent eyes. After Snow Country, if she didn't die, she really didn't know what to do. Because she couldn't see her future clearly, and she couldn't see Li Tianlan's future. She didn't know whether she and Li Tianlan would become husband and wife or enemies in the future if she lived. If she turned deep love into hatred. She would rather die. Death was really good. Qin Weibai took a few deep breaths, picked up the small box on the table and got up to go upstairs. The door of the master bedroom was ajar. An extremely weak cough sounded in the bedroom. Qin Weibai pushed the door open and walked in. In the bedroom full of the smell of blood, a man in plain clothes was lying on the bed. The man looked about 37 or 38 years old, with short hair and a very attractive short beard on his chin. His appearance was not handsome, but it was extremely sharp. As sharp as a sword. In addition to the smell of blood, there was only sword intent in the air. A black cloak stained with blood hung on a hanger in the corner of the room, becoming the source of the smell of blood. How did you get hurt so badly? Qin Weibai glanced at the man and frowned. The man smiled bitterly. Summer solstice is stronger than all of us thought. She almost killed the men of sacrifice from the purgatory of heaven capital with one sword strike. The four of us fought against her sword strike, and it was her sword strike with lowered sword intent. I was a little better, but Duke and General were almost disabled, and military counselor was not much better than me. If I had been one step later. The man was Saint. The four super masters of Samsara escaped from the Wang family of Beihai overnight. Saint did not go to where he should go but came to Lin, and as soon as possible. Okay. Qin Weibai was silent for a while and said flatly. Saint had a bitter smile on his face. It's good to be alive. And if you have nothing to do, maybe you will go to Snow Country to seek death. That's good. Qin Weibai said softly, I want to go and I don't need any formal send-off. Saint's mouth moved and he wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Qin Weibai handed the box in her hand to Saint. This is what you want. After I leave, do what you should do. Recuperate here and then go back. Saint took the box silently. He also knew what was in the box. He opened the box. There was a small but extremely heavy diary in the box. On the front of this diary was his road to the invincible realm. And on the back was the road to domination of the East Emperor Palace in the future. Qin Weibai was really ready for everything. He closed the book and suddenly whispered, I have a question. Go ahead. Qin Weibai said flatly. Why did you attack summer solstice? Saint looked at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai also looked at him and did not speak. This question did not need to be answered. Why did she attack summer solstice? She had made it very clear before. And even if she did not say it, Saint could know. She had had this conversation with Saint many times. Every time Saint asked these questions that did not need to be answered, he actually did not care about the answer to the question. Instead, he wanted to use this question to say something. You are very similar to summer solstice. Saint said softly, you are the kind of lunatics who would do anything for your man. You are too similar. People like you can be very harmless, but they can also be very scary. In different times, you are unique. Such a woman should be respected, and no one will be willing to blame you. Qin Weibai looked at Saint. A trace of anger gradually appeared in her cold eyes. I am very similar to summer solstice? She said in a mocking tone, Are you mocking me? Summer solstice was indeed worthy of respect. But, at least in my heart, my boss, Qin Weibai, is a woman who is qualified to be compared with summer solstice. Saint said seriously. That's only in your eyes. Qin Weibai said, In fact, I am not qualified. I can't compare with her. Saint was silent for a moment and then said with a bitter smile, Actually, I just heard your conversation. Qin Weibai's eyes narrowed. Saint was a little helpless. Although I am seriously injured, my ears are still good. I think Ruzhen is right. You don't owe Tianlan anything. Even if you owe him, he may not care. You don't understand. Qin Weibai shook her head. There's nothing I don't understand. Saint sneered and said, Little Bai, you weren't like this before. At least, you didn't think so when Tianlan appeared. You care too much about Tianlan's evaluation of you. If I have to say, if you didn't go to Heaven Capital 3 years ago and let us do everything, things wouldn't have come to this. You really shouldn't go to Heaven Capital. What else can I do if I don't go to Heaven Capital? Qin Weibai's expression was calm. If you didn't go to Heaven Capital, your thoughts wouldn't be so extreme. Saint said, It's good to be calm. Come. Qin Weibai turned around and walked to the bedroom door. How can I be calm if my heart is not calm? She walked out of the bedroom, left the bamboo forest and returned to the villa where Li Tianlan was. In the villa, Li Tianlan had already gotten up. Lin Fengting, his son, and Li Honghe had also gotten up. Li Honghe sat on the sofa and looked at Qin Weibai coming in. He smiled and nodded. Breakfast will be delivered soon. Qin Weibai said with a smile. I'm afraid I can't have breakfast. I just talked to Minister Dongqing on the phone. They should be here soon. Li Honghe said with a smile. With Li Honghe's status, if he was attacked and died, a funeral ceremony of the highest standard should be held. Now that he was injured but not dead, the people of the Six should send people to visit him. It doesn't matter. Breakfast is enough. Qin Weibai smiled. The roar of the helicopter's rotors sounded in the sky outside the villa. The sound came from far away and finally flew over the sky to the tarmac in the center of the villa area. Almost at the same time, a black Mercedes-Benz drove into the villa area and appeared in front of Qin Weibai's villa. A calm man in his 30s got out of the Mercedes-Benz. The door of the villa was not closed. He hesitated, walked into the courtyard and rang the doorbell. Everyone in the villa suddenly focused their attention on him. Senior Li, I'm Wang Jingxin. The young man introduced himself in a calm tone. Wang Jingxin from the Wang family of Beihai, the first secretary of Lin In? Everyone looked at him quietly. The expression of this upstart, who had long been famous in the political circle of Jianghu state, was still calm, but there was a trace of anxiety in his eyes at this time. His name was Jingxin. But how could he calm down for everything? In the mortal world, except for the experts who really saw through the world, everyone was a striver. Striving was also a pursuit. Chapter 335. Wang Jingxin stood at the door. The anxiety in his eyes was so clear that everyone could see it clearly. This young high-ranking official, who was likely to become the leader of the Southeast Group and even the flag figure in 20 years, was tall and straight. His appearance could only be said to be ordinary, but his eyebrows were extremely thick, which made him look very powerful. Now he stood there quietly. Although he was a little anxious, he still had a kind of dignified official authority and calmness. Secretary Wang? What a rare visitor. Li Honghe smiled but did not get up. He just said slowly, please come in. Wang Jingxin came in. He came to Li Honghe and bowed deeply. Hello, Senior Li, I'm not very good. Li Honghe looked at Wang Jingxin. His voice was soft but the content was very direct. Wang Jingxin's body, which had just straightened up, suddenly froze. He glanced at Li Honghe. Li Honghe was also looking at him. His eyes were deep and peaceful. Wang Jingxin could only see calmness. Wang Jingxin did not expect Li Honghe to be so direct. He did not expect Li Honghe to be so calm. At this moment he even had a very absurd idea in his heart. Jianghu Sword Emperor, who ranked first on the divine list. State Protecting War God, who ranked fifth on the divine list. The two of them attacked an old man together. Not only did they fail, but the other party could still sit here calmly. What on earth did they do? Did they come to drink and chat? I heard that Senior Li was attacked last night, Wang Jingxin said, but he did not finish. Li Honghe directly interrupted him and asked with a smile, Jingxin, are you disappointed to see me like this? Wang Jingxin's heart skipped a beat, but his powerful face did not change at all. He just said softly, Senior Li is the pillar of Jianghu state. You work hard and make great contributions. Your health is very important to Jianghu state. I am relieved to see you are fine. He said it very sincerely, and everyone could even hear a trace of relief in his tone. Lin Fengting, who was sitting next to Li Honghe, smiled, shook his head, stood up and said, I'll go out for a walk with Wuxia. He was impatient to get involved in these things. Behind such sincere relief there were all conspiracies. There was no real sincerity under the hypocritical appearance, only insidiousness. This kind of life was too tiring. Li Honghe looked at Lin Fengting's back. There was some disappointment in his eyes. Lin Fengting's departure was not only because of his personality, but also because of his stance. He would protect the Li family. But the Lin clan still did not want to enter the secular world and participate in the disputes of Jianghu state. The Lin clan was outside of Jianghu, and Lin Fengting was like a wild crane, he had no pursuits. Therefore his heart was the calmest. If he wanted to protect someone he didn't need to gamble because there was nothing that he wanted to gain. Therefore one strike was enough. Li Honghe turned his eyes to Wang Jingxin. Other than Li Tianlan, there was only Qin Weibai in the hall. Therefore he spoke more directly, so Jing Xn, you're not disappointed? Wang Jingxin seemed to have completely relaxed. He was not interested in martial arts, but in terms of scheming and shrewdness, he was not inferior to anyone. In such a situation he naturally knew what kind of attitude to use. I'm not disappointed. He said, I'm just a little worried. Worried? Li Honghe raised his eyebrows. For myself. Wang Jingxin's gaze was frank and calm. He was completely telling the truth. He had thought that he would see a seriously injured and dying Li Honghe today, but he did not expect to see a calm veteran of Jianghu state as if nothing had happened. The better Li Honghe was, the more trouble the Wang family of Beihai would have. Li Honghe, who did not seem to be seriously injured, was completely worthy of some forces increasing their support for the Li family. Wang Jingxin knew the internal meeting held by the giant group last night. He even knew some of the contents of the meeting. The Dongqing clan did not know that Wang Tianzong actually did not make any arrangements when he left Lin'an. The old man of the Lu family suggested that Dongqing Rushi should marry Wang Jingxin, which was Wang Jingxin's own proposal. But Dongqing Wudi refused this arrangement. This refusal was tantamount to showing his attitude of supporting the Li family. If he supported the Li family, he would definitely make the Wang family of Beihai pay the price. Li Honghe was attacked in Lin'an. With his identity, if the higher-ups really investigated as the top leader of Lin, and Wang Jingxin was undoubtedly responsible. The giant group supported the Li family and wanted to make the Wang family of Beihai pay something. Wang Jingxin was the best and most obvious breakthrough. In the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Jingxin's branch was not too powerful, but he himself was very valued by Wang Tianzong. Even if he was the person in charge, there would not be too fatal consequences. At worst, he would leave Lin and end Jianghu. Wang Jingxin did not want to leave. He had been working in Lin, and for nearly 6 years. If he was forced to leave the base that he had operated for many years because of this matter, even if he would get a position in another place that was no less than his current position, the actual loss was still unimaginable. This was the purpose of his visit today. He did not expect himself to change the Li family's attitude toward him. But at least he had to try something. At present, not leaving Lin, and was his bottom line. As for the rest, he had enough psychological preparation. Your concern is very reasonable. Li Honghe looked at Wang Jingxin gently, and his tone was almost unacceptable. He was very direct. Wang Jingxin was even more direct. He did not answer Li Honghe's words, but turned directly to look at Li Tianlan. Hello. He took the initiative to reach out his hand. Hello. Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with him without batting an eyelid. What do you need me to do for you in Lin'an? Wang Jingxin asked directly. This was not a surrender but a deal. He was the core young power of the Wang family of Beihai, and there was no possibility of changing his position. But this did not mean that he could not make a deal with the Li family. Even if they were enemies, there was the possibility of a deal. And if he could stay in Lin'an, this was also a situation that Wang Tianzong would like to see. The roar of the helicopter outside the window sounded again. Another helicopter flew over from above. Wang Jingxin still looked at Li Tianlan, and his eyes quietly became dignified. I'll entertain Secretary Wang, Qin Weibai said at the right time with a perfect smile. Qin Weibai said with a perfect smile, Tianlan, you can stay here. Marshal Dongqing is coming. Maybe he will bring some unexpected gifts. What gifts? Li Honghe laughed and whispered, it's just an old military uniform. Wang Jingxin's pupils suddenly contracted as if he was pricked by a needle. An old military uniform. But that was Li Honghe's military uniform. Li Honghe glanced at Li Tianlan. You guys go together. He said, I can entertain the distinguished guests by myself. Li Tianlan thought for a moment and nodded. Secretary Wang, please. He pointed upstairs. There was a more private small living room upstairs. Wang Jingxin followed Li Tianlan and walked over. Qin Weibai glanced at Li Honghe before she stepped forward. From an angle that Li Tianlan could not see, her eyes were cold and full of disgust. Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai's eyes calmly and kept his smile. Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes, took a deep breath, and turned to follow Li Tianlan. The third helicopter flew over. Li Honghe stood up and walked to the door. It was a short distance from the living room to the door. The morning wind blew into the villa through the door with the smell of West Lake, and it was cool. The turbidity in Li Honghe's eyes began to fade and become clear. He was the only one left in the hall. He didn't need to hide anything. He straightened up in cotton clothes, and there was a brilliant light in his eyes. 3 men who looked only middle-aged appeared in Li Honghe's sight with their backs to the morning sun. Dongqing Wudi, the executive minister of the army headquarters and a member of the decision-making committee of Jianghu State, walked in the middle. On his left and right sides were figures that Li Honghe was very familiar with. The 3 men looked solemn. They walked into the courtyard and came to the door. Li Honghe stood there quietly, his eyes deep and calm. The three men subconsciously wanted to bow. Li Honghe waved his hand with a smile and said, "Let's go in and talk. Listen to Uncle Li." Dongqing Wudi smiled. He stood at the door in a neat military uniform. The golden martial rank shone dazzlingly in the morning light, looking majestic. Li Honghe turned and walked into the living room. He sat down again where he had just been sitting. "What about the other one?" Li Honghe asked. "He's in the back. As the rumors say, he and Ziyuan don't get along well. It's better to separate." The middle-aged man on the left of Dongqing Wudi said with a smile. At first glance he looked very young and energetic, but in fact he was slightly old. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were very dense, and his hair was dyed black with hair dye. Among the three he was the oldest, so he seemed to be the most relaxed in front of Li Honghe. "Jingmin, you're in good spirits. Can you work for another term?" Li Honghe looked at him and asked with a smile. "Another term? It's hard. Not to mention Jianghu State, even this guy probably won't let me work for another term. I'm just holding a position now to pave the way for his good son-in-law." The middle-aged man named Jingmin pointed to Dongqing Wudi with a smile. Dongqing Wudi smiled and said nothing. Wu Jingmin. In Jianghu province of Jianghu State, this was definitely a well-known name. Even in the political circle of the whole Jianghu State, this name could be said to be a legend. In recent decades, he was the only powerful figure who had served as the leader of the same province for more than 15 years. The core force of the Southeast faction, Wu Jingmin, the leader of Jianghu province. He had never entered the decision-making committee in his life, but in Jianghu, his foundation was unimaginably deep. Even the highest-level directors had to think about what he said seriously. Wu Jingmin was 69 years old this year. He should have retired 2 years ago or even 5 years ago, but he always sat in the position of the leader of Jianghu without moving. With his ability and prestige, as long as his health allowed, no one would doubt that he could not continue to work for another term, which was enough for him to hold the highest power in Jianghu for 20 years. "It's the Li family that let you down." Li Honghe looked at Wu Jingmin with soft eyes. "Your Highness, it's boring to say this. I've been fine these years." Wu Jingmin stopped smiling and looked at Li Honghe seriously. Dongqing Wudi was Li Honghe's junior. Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations on the right of Dongqing Wudi, was also Li Honghe's junior. But Wu Jingmin, who was 69 years old this year, was Li Honghe's friend. Li Honghe was a little older than Wu Jingmin. At the peak of the Li family, Wu Jingmin could be said to be the talent that Li Honghe valued most. Among the core members of the Li family, his rank might not be the highest, but he was recognized as one of the political forces that could best represent Li Honghe's will. If the Li family had not collapsed, Wu Jingmin's journey would never have stopped in Jianghu. Now, at least he would have entered the cabinet. Even if he could not get the principal position, he would at least be the first deputy prime minister of the cabinet. However, with the collapse of the Li family, Wu Jingmin's rank had never changed. He became the ruler of a province from the governor, but his political life had come to an end. Although he had been silent all these years after the collapse of the Li family. It was the same even after he reappeared. But he had never won the real trust of the Wang family of Beihai and the full support of the Southeast Group. Wu Jingmin said that he had been fine these years. How could he be fine? Li Honghe took a deep look at him, turned his head and looked at Ning Ziyuan, who was silent. This general of Jianghu State, who was also promoted by him, had a completely different experience from Wu Jingmin. Wu Jingmin, who had been silent and never said anything for the Li family, had never won the real trust of the Wang family of Beihai. But in the past many years, Ning Ziyuan, who had been speaking for the Li family, was deeply trusted by Wang Tianzong. But in recent years, Wang Tianzong's attitude toward him had changed subtly. Ning Ziyuan had an ordinary appearance, low-key and silent. Noticing Li Honghe's gaze, he seemed to be a little excited and subconsciously bowed. "Ziyuan, Chenqing is good. I heard from Donglai that Chenqing is in love with Donglai's granddaughter? Very good. Some feelings can't change with time. In this way you and Donglai will be closer." Li Honghe said with a smile. "It's all the children's business. I didn't intervene, but I'm very supportive of this matter." Ning Ziyuan said respectfully. Li Honghe said yes, hesitated and asked, "How has Migres been these years? Chenqing has had a stiff relationship with you these years. Is it because of Migres's daughter?" His eyes were a little sad. Dongqing Wudi was puzzled. Not to mention him, even Wu Jingmin, who had never spoken for the Li family but was definitely on their side, was a little puzzled. He didn't know who this so-called Migres was. He could only vaguely guess that it was a code name. "Migres is very good. Ning Ziyuan said softly, he has a strong force in his hands now. He has been preparing for these years. As long as there is a need, he will do his best to help Tianlan. You've worked hard. Li Honghe suddenly didn't know what to say. He was silent for a long time and then he said these three words dryly. The collapse of the Li family was so fierce and rapid that even Li Honghe couldn't leave too many flawless backups. Wu Jingmin was one of them and there were others. But among all the backups, the most flawless one was a group of hidden forces with only 7 people. That was the core hidden force belonging to the Li family, codenamed Starry Sky. They used the Big Dipper as their code name. Ning Ziyuan ranked last, codenamed Alcade. After more than 20 years, 6 of the 7 people were still alive. Only Tianji was dead. He died in Heaven Capital. Thank him for me. Li Honghe said softly, his identity is special. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to see him again. I will tell Tianlan that when he returns to the Li family, no one will say that he is a servant of 3 families. He is a hero of the Li family and you are all heroes of the Li family. Ning Ziyuan wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally he nodded silently. The sound of light footsteps could be heard. A man in his 40s came in from the door of the villa. The man was tall and burly. He was dressed in casual clothes, but his body was as straight as a sword, looking majestic. He looked domineering and wild. He had a striking bald head, solemnly holding a box in his hands, and walked slowly into the living room. Senior Li, he walked up to Li Honghe, put down the box and said in a respectful tone, "Sit down." Li Honghe nodded with a smile. The bald man sat down beside Ning Ziyuan. There was no expression on his majestic face. He didn't even look at Ning Ziyuan. I say it's okay for you to pretend in normal days. Now we're all on the same side. Why are you still so tense? It's as if you really have a deep hatred for Ziyuan. Wu Jingmin suddenly scolded with a smile. The bald man was stunned, and then he shook his head with a wry smile. It's a deep hatred. Until now, my sister-in-law still thinks that my brother-in-law is a pervert. It's this bastard who told his sister that I liked him. After so many years, this misunderstanding is so big. Ning Ziyuan's sister was Ning Sini. Ning Sini was the daughter-in-law of the Jianghu family, a wealthy family in Huading. Her brother-in-law was naturally also surnamed Zhang. Zhangqi, the minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters of Jianghu State. Zhangqi liked Ning Sini, but Ning Ziyuan married his sister to Zhangqi's brother, Zhang Xiaohua. This matter caused a great uproar in the southeast at that time. Zhangqi also completely fell out with his family and Ning Ziyuan. This matter was still brought up to this day. At that time, the Wang family of Beihai appointed Zhang Qi as the minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters in order to check and balance Ning Ziyuan's expansion in the Eastern Theater of Operations, which was gradually alienated from them. For more than 20 years, Zhang Qi and Ning Ziyuan rarely met each other. The relationship they showed was almost incompatible with each other. They just managed to deal with each other in public. Today's gathering was also a public place in the eyes of outsiders. Li Honghe was assassinated in Lin'an. Wu Jingmin the host. Ning Ziyuan, the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations in charge of the defense of the southeast of Jianghu State. Zhang Qi, the minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters. Dongqing Wudi, the actual #1 person in the military today. Their identities gave them all a reason to show up here to visit Li Honghe. As for the actual scene of this visit, who would have thought that it would be so harmonious? Li Honghe smiled and waved his hand. He knew that Zhang Qi was joking, so he didn't bother to say more. He looked at the box that Zhang Qi brought over. The box had been opened. Inside was a military uniform. The military uniform was old, but the old color seemed to be stained with the breath and glory of endless blood and fire. The old-fashioned martial rank of Jianghu State was worn on the military uniform, shining with golden light. This was the military uniform that belonged to Li Honghe back then. Everyone's eyes were focused on this military uniform. When will the meeting begin? Li Honghe asked softly. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Dongqing Wudi said. Li Honghe was attacked. This was a big deal. The decision-making committee had already announced the meeting time last night. Li Honghe gently reached out his hand. He put his hand on the military uniform with a nostalgic look on his face. Li Honghe's voice sounded in the silent living room, resolute and without hesitation. I'm going to change, he said. The eyes of Dongqing Wudi, Wu Jingmin, Zhang Qi, and Ning Ziyuan burst into a sharp light at the same time. The 4 of them stood up at the same time, bent down and bowed deeply. A clear and steady voice swept through the living room in an instant, tough and surging. "Welcome back to Yuzhou, Your Highness. After more than 20 years. Back to Yuzhou." Li Honghe touched the marshal's epaulette on the military uniform with his fingers and turned his head to the north. In the north was West Lake. The water on West Lake turned and rippled suddenly. The wind came from the south and blew to the north, getting faster and faster, as if it would never stop. Chapter 336. From early morning to dusk. Wang Jingxin talked with Li Tianlan for a long time. There was a balcony with an excellent view in the small living room of the villa. Li Tianlan saw his grandfather boarded the helicopter surrounded by Dongqing Wudi and others. The quaint and old general uniform was dignified and dazzling, like the only remaining afterglow of the Li family. He felt the sudden gust of wind in Linhan. The green leaves were swept high into the sky in the wind, and the whole lake was turbulent in the wind. After the gust, Li Tianlan didn't know what would happen to the Li family. Just like now, no one knew the result of Li Honghe's return to Yuzhou. The wind outside was howling all over the sky. The summer wind was equally hot. But sitting in the villa, Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little cold. Looking at Wang Jingxin in front of him and listening to his conditions one after another. It was not until now that Li Tianlan really felt the part of the general trend in wind and rain related to himself and the Li family. It was completely different from 3 years ago. The decisive battle in Heaven Capital 3 years ago was the general trend of the Dark World. Jianghu State's gains and losses were related to Li Tianlan, but it was not closely related to him. And this time the Li family was completely standing in the center of the storm. Li Honghe, who had left Yuzhou for many years, returned to Yuzhou. What would he get? This matter was related to Jianghu State, but it was also not closely related to him. It was just the gains and losses of the Li family. How much the Li family got from this matter could completely affect Li Tianlan's future advance and retreat. Compared with that, the negotiation with Wang Jingxin was completely insignificant. Therefore, Li Tianlan spoke very little the whole afternoon. He was cautious in his wording, but his mind had already flown with Li Honghe to the plenary meeting of the decision-making committee in Yuzhou. Qin Weibai had been accompanying Li Tianlan. In this small, private living room, even flaming fire did not come up to the table. Qin Weibai was both a waiter and a representative of Li Tianlan. She made tea herself and then negotiated with Wang Jingxin according to Li Tianlan's intention. In the afternoon, Qin Weibai made more than 20 requests to Wang Jingxin. The requests were big and small. The big ones were extremely big. The small ones were very small, and all of them were details. Qin Weibai seemed to really attach great importance to this negotiation, so her attitude was extremely serious. Li Tianlan was silent most of the time. He thought of the meeting in Yuzhou and listened to the negotiation between Qin Weibai and Wang Jingxin. In his previous world there was only martial arts. Politics, tactics, the general trend, to him all of this was still very unfamiliar to him. Martial arts did not represent everything. So now Li Tianlan had begun to consciously learn these things. Fortunately, there was no shortage of such teachers around him. Both his grandfather, Li Honghe, and his wife, Qin Weibai, were excellent in this aspect. Dusk gradually passed. The sun was setting. The night shrouded Linhan. The wind outside the window became a gentle breeze again. After talking with Qin Weibai for the whole afternoon, Wang Jingxin agreed to most of Qin Weibai's conditions. After exchanging contact information with Li Tianlan, she took her leave without hesitation. Li Tianlan and Qin Weibai walked him out of the villa and watched his black Mercedes-Benz leave the villa area. The red taillights were getting farther and farther away in their sight. He left in a hurry, Li Tianlan said. Indeed, when Wang Jingxin left, he was still calm and indifferent, but the speed of the car revealed his actual mood. When he left, the speed of the car could be regarded as speeding in some parts of downtown Linhan, not to mention the villa area. He was under a lot of pressure and he talked a little more today. It's normal for him to rush back to sort out his thoughts and report to Wang Tianzong. Qin Weibai stood beside Li Tianlan and naturally took his arm. The light in the villa shone into the night with the open door. Qin Weibai's shadow was very long. Her long soft hair danced with the night breeze, looking tranquil and gentle. That's what I'm surprised about. Li Tianlan was silent for a while, then whispered, "Don't you think he compromised too much?" There were some things that he had not touched. Without contact it was impossible to fully understand. So he used a tone of asking for advice. Qin Weibai almost spent the whole afternoon making requests. Although she was smiling, her attitude was extremely tough. For example, in the future, the development of the East Emperor Palace in Lin and would get full support from Wang Jingxin. For example, Lin and would rebuild Lonely Mountain. For example, Wang Jingxin would come forward to resist the pressure from the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters to the East Emperor Palace in Lin and Li Tianlan really didn't understand politics. But he was not a fool. At least he knew that Qin Weibai was demanding an exorbitant price. If Wang Jingxin agreed to all of them, the treatment of the East Emperor Palace in Lin and would even be no less than that of the young forces cultivated by the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Jingxin agreed to most of them. And the rest of them did not explicitly refuse, just saying that they were considering it. Was such a compromise just to not leave Lin in? What surprised Li Tianlan most was Qin Weibai's attitude. Her attitude was really too serious. Looking at the series of requirements she put forward, even Li Tianlan himself felt that Qin Weibai wanted him to set the headquarters of the East Emperor Palace in Lin and the Li family would occupy Lonely Mountain. But the problem was that the future territory of the East Emperor Palace was Tiannan. This is just the beginning. Qin Weibai took Li Tianlan's arm and walked down the steps. Her whole body was almost attached to him and she said softly, "In the future our requirements will be more and more. It is difficult for Wang Jingxin to refuse our current requirements. Once he agrees to help us this time, he may make more compromises to us in the future. When he really doesn't want to entangle with us, we won't need him." She took Li Tianlan to Westlake and her voice was soft and gentle. "Tianlan, it's hard for you to understand how important a base camp is to a politician, especially for Wang Jingxin. Unless it's really a last resort, he won't give up Lin An. The Wang family of Beihai won't let him give up. Wang Jingxin has a promising future. If there is no accident in the future, he will definitely enter the decision-making committee. But in the end, whether he is a counselor or a director and how he ranks, not only depends on his ambition and means, but also the necessary time, place and people. If he is forced to leave Lin, and without preparation, it will be difficult for him to reach the end in the future. It's not as simple as changing a position at all." Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent and firm. This was almost not a speculation based on wisdom. It was a confirmation after understanding. "What?" Li Tianlan asked. Qin Weibai obviously hesitated for a moment, and then said softly, "Because here is Jianghu." "So?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He really didn't know much about the specific forces of the Li family before, but these were things that he had to get in touch with after all. The Li family and the Wang family of Beihai have always been very close. For hundreds of years, the two families have been controlling the Southeast group at the same time. So before the collapse of the Li family, the lineal descendants of the two families were inseparable on many occasions. They were all on the same side. In many places, the lineal descendants of the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family were squeezed together and worked hand in hand. But there were also subtle differences. If you want to distinguish this slight difference, Jianghu can be said to be the strongest base camp of the Li family. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's quietly changing face and said softly, "Do you understand? Just like the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai province and Wuxia province, Jianghu used to be the strongest fortress of the Li family, and it was also the place where the Li family had the strongest power. Even if the Li family collapsed, the personnel adjustment here has not been big over the years. Wu Jingmin served as the first secretary of Jianghu for nearly 20 years, which is the most obvious example. He entered the Central Committee of Zhongzhou State 4 times in a row, once as the governor and 3 times as the first secretary. I'm afraid even the Wang family of Beihai doesn't know how strong Wu Jingmin's foundation is in Jianghu." Qin Weibai said quietly, "This is one of the most developed provinces in Zhongzhou State. The Li family collapsed but the Southeast group is still there. So although Jianghu doesn't belong to the Li family, it still belongs to the Southeast group. But in the end this place belongs to Wu Jingmin. But in the end Wu Jingmin is in the Southeast group, so Jianghu is the back garden of the Southeast group. Wu Jingmin is in the Li family, so this is the back garden of the Li family." He was the talent that Senior Li valued the most in those days. Over the years he has never expressed any opinion on the collapse of the Li family, but he has always firmly guarded the last foundation of the Li family. Senior Li is very good at judging people. In this life I'm afraid he only misjudged 2 people. Li Tianlan was so shocked that he couldn't speak at all. He thought that the Li family had long been desolate. He thought that the Li family had long been without foundation. But only when he arrived in Jianghu did he understand what was going on. Why didn't Wang Tianzong touch Wu Jingmin? Li Tianlan couldn't help asking. How could it be so easy? Qin Weibai shook her head. The collapse of the Li family was too sudden. The Wang family of Beihai was unprepared, and it was extremely chaotic in the early days. It was not that Wang Tianzong didn't want to touch Wu Jingmin, but he couldn't. The Wang family of Beihai's inaction had already made many people dissatisfied. The Li family had just collapsed, and they were eager to deal with the person that Senior Li valued the most. This was simply asking for trouble. After Wang Tianzong stabilized the situation, Wu Jingmin had become the top leader of Jianghu and was deeply rooted. At that time it was not good to act rashly. About 10 years ago, there was news inside the Southeast group that wanted Wu Jingmin to go further and transfer him out of Jianghu, but he refused. So Wang Jingxin came to Jianghu. Li Tianlan was silent, but he had completely understood what Qin Weibai meant. Wang Jingxin came to Jianghu and ran Lin, and with some kind of cleaning task. He rose step by step in Jianghu. If there was no accident, with his identity as the top leader of the provincial capital, he could become the governor of Jianghu in 2 years. Jianghu was the foundation that Wu Jingmin took care of for the Li family. If Wang Jingxin succeeded in replacing Wu Jingmin, he could gradually turn the Li family's power into his own, so that he could almost completely eliminate the Li family's voice in the Southeast group. At that time he could rely on this power to get the support of the Southeast group and embark on his own road to success. If he left Jianghu, it was tantamount to his failure. Not to mention that the aura of a political strongman would be dim, other provinces might not have such opportunities. So, the whole of Jianghu is actually still under the control of the Li family? Li Tianlan took a deep breath and asked, suppressing his inner amazement. What kind of future would it be with a province as the foundation? No. To be exact, it is under the control of Wu Jingmin, and only half of Jianghu. Qin Weibai's tone was calm. And as time goes by, his influence in Jianghu will slowly decline. Many people in Jianghu have relations with the original Li family. Even if they are not his henchmen, at least they have been helped by the Li family. But people are realistic. Over the years, Wu Jingmin has been as stable as Mount Tai in Jianghu, so these people can naturally stay put. But as he gets older, those people will definitely have other ideas. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan softly. It's not easy for the Li family to take over Jianghu again. Even if Wu Jingmin wants to hand over Jianghu, it will be very difficult for you to take it over. It's not that you are not strong enough, but that they can't see hope. If one was not strong enough, there would naturally be no hope. This was actually the same thing. So this time Grandpa returned to Yuzhou, is it to fight for this hope? Li Tianlan asked. The two strolled in the West Lake, snuggling up to each other like a couple in love. But what they discussed was the pattern of the entire Zhongzhou state and the survival of the Li family. This hope is the price that the Wang family of Beihai must pay this time. Qin Weibai said softly, I even suspect that this time Wang Tianzong and Gu Xingyun came to Lin, and together is an opportunity created by Senior Li quietly. Even if Lin Fengting doesn't come, Senior Li should be fine. He has been waiting for this opportunity. Now the opportunity is here. The Wang family of Beihai will not let Wang Jingxin, who shoulders the task of cleaning up the Li family, leave Lin in. But after this meeting, there is bound to be a person on your side who is no less qualified or skilled than Wang Jingxin to Jianghu. The two people check and balance each other so that those who are loyal to Wu Jingmin will continue to retain hope and tentatively approach you. A person who was strong enough to compete with Wang Jingxin. Li Tianlan thought of Zhou Yuanshan at the first time. Both of them were popular figures who were most likely to become giants in Zhongzhou state in the next 20 years. At present, the force in Jianghu led by Wu Jingmin seemed to belong to the Southeast group, but in fact, it was outside the six. Whether it was Wang Jingxin or Zhou Yuanshan, whoever could get the support of this force would make their strength expand rapidly. This force, when the two competed fiercely, could even decide who would eventually go to the altar and become the leader of Zhongzhou state. Wu Jingmin was old, so those who came to Jianghu after this meeting would become the new hope of those people. As for this meeting, Qin Weibai thought for a while and said slowly, it's not that simple. At least Wu Jingmin's departure is uncertain. That's why I negotiated with Wang Jingxin. He agreed to our conditions. Together with the newcomer to Jianghu, your strength in Jianghu will be very strong. In the future, when you manage Tiannan on the surface, you can also secretly develop your own strength in Jianghu. Li Tianlan looked at his watch. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The meeting of the decision-making committee that started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon had been held for 8 hours, and it was not over yet. What will be the result of this meeting? Li Tianlan asked in a low voice. I'm not sure. Qin Weibai shook her head. She took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said softly, I have a piece of top-secret information. Zhang Qi of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters of Huading is likely to be a hidden pawn left by Senior Li. With the support of the giant group Wu Jingmin, Ning Ziyuan, Zhang Qi. Tianlan, don't you understand what this means? The support of the giant group. If the top leader of Jianghu, the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, and the minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters were all the forces of the Li family, what did it mean? Li Tianlan's face suddenly changed. Senior Li's return to Yuzhou this time is entirely based on Jianghu to plot the southeast. Qin Weibai said in a low voice. After more than 20 years of silence and low-key, the opportunity finally came. When the afterglow of the Li family was about to fade, Li Honghe had taken it for granted that the entire southeast of Zhongzhou state was his prey. Based on Jianghu, plot the southeast. Chapter 337. Second update, this chapter is yesterday, it's still an unfounded chapter, today's update remains unchanged, it's 10 minutes late, sorry. What was the southeast? On the map of Zhongzhou state, the southeast, Nanyue, Jiangnan, Jiangzhou, Minnan, and many other provinces and regions could be said to be the southeast. The sphere of influence of the southeast group was far broader than the map. In fact, Wuxia, Jiangnan, Jiangzhou, Jianghuai, Dongshan, Minnan, and even Huading 10 years ago could be regarded as the most traditional sphere of influence of the southeast group. Li Tianlan didn't know which southeast his grandfather was plotting. But no matter which one it was, the decision-making committee meeting, which had lasted for more than 8 hours, could be regarded as an earth-shattering contest. It was past 10 o'clock in the evening. The meeting in Yuzhou had been going on for more than 9 hours, but there was still no specific news. Li Tianlan took Qin Weibai to a restaurant next to the West Lake to eat a grilled fish, and then returned to the villa. It was related to the pattern of the southeast of Zhongzhou state and the future path of the Li family. In such an atmosphere, the charming scenery of the West Lake in the night seemed to have completely lost its color. Qin Weibai could clearly feel the anxiety and solemnity behind Li Tianlan's calmness. He sat on the sofa, his body straight, looking indifferent and relaxed, but in fact his muscles were tense. Don't worry. Qin Weibai walked behind Li Tianlan and massaged his shoulders with her fair and tender hands. She used just the right amount of strength. The outcome of the meeting will definitely be beneficial to us. The only thing we're not sure about right now is how beneficial it will be. At least for now, the re-rise of the Li family is unstoppable. Li Tianlan smiled and reached out to pat Qin Weibai's little hand. Rise. He was really embarrassed to use this word. Wu Jingmin, Ning Ziyuan, Zhang Qi. These three people were in high positions and were definitely a great force when put together. But no matter how great the force was, it was just a force after all. It was not even comparable to some branches within a group, let alone a group. Tonight's meeting was not so much a meeting about the re-rise of the Li family in Zhongzhou state, but a meeting about the reappearance of the Li family in Zhongzhou state. At most, it appeared above board, nothing more. What is the possibility of Wu Jingmin leaving Jiangzhu? Li Tianlan asked softly. He had never heard of Wu Jingmin before. He hadn't even formally met Wu Jingmin, but he had to respect this old man whose position in Wuxia was as stable as Mount Tai. It was not only his loyalty and perseverance. At the same time, they respected his wisdom and courage. He had taken root in Jiangzhou for 20 years and gathered the forces of the Li family scattered in Jiangzhou around him. He controlled and protected them. How difficult was it to achieve this? This was true wisdom, courage, and wisdom. The possibility is more than 80%. Qin Weibai rubbed her hand gently on Li Tianlan's head and whispered. Li Tianlan frowned and said nothing. Wu Jingmin was definitely the stabilizing force and pillar of Jiangzhou. If he was transferred away from Jiangzhou, even if his level was one step higher, the consequences would be disastrous for the Li family gathered around him. That was why Qin Weibai said she wanted to give them hope. If there was no such hope, as soon as Wu Jingmin left, the people gathered around him would show their true kindness to the Wang family of Beihai for their own sake. This had nothing to do with betrayal. It was also against his will. Even if the Li family could give them hope again, Jiangzhou would not be as stable as Wu Jingmin's. As long as they were not stupid, not many people would exchange the sky-reaching pillar for the hope of the future. In fact, this is not a bad thing. If Wu Jingmin leaves Jiangzhou, it will definitely have an impact in a short time, but it should not be a big impact. Qin Weibai said softly, Wang Jingxin is the flag of the Wang family of Beihai in Jiangzhou. This time, the person who will compete with or even suppress Wang Jingxin will definitely not be an ordinary person. He must be someone who can compete with him in all aspects. At present, this candidate is most likely to be Zhou Yuanshan. He represents not only himself, but also the wealthy Zhou family and even the entire giant group. This hope is big enough. At least, it is big enough that no one will act rashly for the time being. This time Wu Jingmin is taking a step up, not retiring. In time, it will not be difficult for Zhou Yuanshan to control Jianghu with Wu Jingmin's support. Giant group, Li Tianlan muttered to himself and shook his head with a bitter smile. Were they going to get involved in the end? I understand your idea. Qin Weibai climbed from behind the sofa and sat in Li Tianlan's arms. She whispered, but that's just your idea. You don't want to owe the Dongqing clan too much and you are afraid that you can't pay it back. But if the other party insists on standing with you, you can't refuse. But if the other party insists on standing with you, you can't refuse. The Dongqing clan has made up their mind. It's too late for you to think about it. His voice was calm and peaceful. Li Tianlan felt that these words were a little familiar. It seemed that he had heard similar words somewhere, but he couldn't remember who said it at the moment. He shook his head, pulled out a cigarette, lit it and took a deep breath. Your mind is in a mess. Qin Weibai looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. A little. Li Tianlan did not deny it. Don't think too much. Qin Weibai touched Li Tianlan's hair. In fact, this situation is really good. Whether Wu Jingmin leaves or not, Senior Li will not get nothing in the southeast. In any case, there will be a place for the Li family in the southeast. Compared with the beginning, this result is very good. Li Tianlan nodded and took a long breath. That's right. Qin Weibai lowered her head and kissed Li Tianlan's face. The fragrance was intoxicating. Your most important goal now is to improve your strength. If you are in the invincible realm now, everything tonight will be very different. You may feel that you owe the Dongqing clan a lot now. But if you really grow up and become the chosen one, you can pay back everything you owe them. I just want to tell you that if you don't have enough strength since you owe them, then you owe them. It's no good to think about it. Only when you are strong can you have a clear conscience. Chosen one, Li Tianlan smiled. His smile was complicated and hard to understand. He didn't doubt that he would break through into the invincible realm. But he, who was known as the chosen one of Zhongzhou state, didn't know whether he would become one. He didn't even know how strong the so-called chosen one was. He only had a vague idea. In my heart, you are the chosen one. The only chosen one. Qin Weibai put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck. Her eyes were gentle and firm. What about Dongqing Huangtu? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. He heard the name Dongqing Huangtu for the first time in Qin Weibai. However, this name had always been a mystery to him. He knew that Dongqing Huangtu was the chosen one. That was all. You are stronger than him. Qin Weibai's body stiffened for a moment. Then she put her arms around Li Tianlan's neck tightly. How strong is the chosen one? Li Tianlan murmured to himself. His eyes were a little dazed. Silly husband, the chosen one is just a title, not a specific realm. Qin Weibai said softly, the chosen one is the glory given to the strongest by the era. When no one knows martial arts, the ice-condensing realm can be the chosen one. How can there be a specific standard of strength in different eras? What about this era? Li Tianlan asked. This question was very complicated, so complicated that no one could easily answer it. But Qin Weibai could. She thought about it seriously and said softly, my sister has a sword. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows and felt a little confused. She is not strong, but because of that sword, she can become one of the strongest in the dark world. According to this era, Wang Tianzong is the one closest to the so-called chosen one. But he is not. Li Tianlan said softly. Indeed not, but he is invincible now. Whether it is deity of the purgatory of heaven capital or Lin Fengting of the Lin clan, if they really fight to the death, they will be a little worse than Wang Tianzong. He is absolutely invincible, but he is not dominant enough. According to the current combat capability, if someone can face my sister at the same time plus deity and Lin Fengting, without hurting his foundation, then this person must be the chosen one. Qin Weibai said in detail. Then she paused and continued, I mean when all three of them are holding murderous weapons. 3 experts at the peak of the invincible realm. 3 murderous weapons. Besieging but not hurting his foundation. This was the chosen one of this era. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. He put his arms around Qin Weibai's slender waist and said, Can Dongqing Huangtu do this? He can. Qin Weibai said without hesitation. He won't have a problem at his peak. So you must do it in the future. You are my man and you must be stronger than him. A question that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time was finally asked by him. Naturally, he blurted it out. What about Dongqing Huangtu? Li Tianlan looked into Qin Weibai's eyes and asked, who is he to you? His tone was a little strange. Because when Qin Weibai mentioned Dongqing Huangtu, she behaved very strangely. Li Tianlan couldn't say this feeling in his heart. If he had to say it, it was displeasure. Because of Qin Weibai's strangeness at that time. Even though he was already a dead man at that time. Qin Weibai was obviously stunned. She sat on Li Tianlan's lap and tidied her hair. After a moment of silence, she giggled and said, you are nervous. Are you jealous? She behaved very naturally. But sometimes it looked the most unnatural. Answer my question. Li Tianlan slapped Qin Weibai's round and plump buttocks. Qin Weibai's body trembled. She bit her lip and said, I've given you all my firsts. My first kiss, my first. I've given you everything. You bad guy, do you want to deny it? I haven't even held hands with other men before I met you. Who is he to me? Qin Weibai lay on Li Tianlan's chest, bit his neck and muttered. Li Tianlan coughed dryly and then chuckled. His anxious mood seemed to relax with the delicate fragrance on Qin Weibai's body. Don't think too much. Qin Weibai lay on Li Tianlan's chest and whispered softly, no matter what happens, I will help you. Li Tianlan's body gradually relaxed and he whispered, you will always be by my side, right? Of course. Qin Weibai's body trembled slightly and she chuckled. Li Tianlan fell silent. After a long time he whispered, little Bai. Qin Weibai's response was languid and delicate. Why are you so nice to me? Li Tianlan picked her up from his body, looked into her eyes and asked. Because you're my husband. Qin Weibai chuckled. If I don't treat you well, should I treat others well? She lay in Li Tianlan's arms again. Li Tianlan held her body and was silent for a while. Then he laughed at himself and said, many times I ask myself why you are so nice to me. Qin Weibai did not speak. She lay quietly in Li Tianlan's arms. Her eyes were in a trance and seemed to be out of focus. Many years ago he planted a flower in her heart, which was as barren as a desert. He didn't remember. But she still remembered. What she wanted to return to him was more than a drop of blood. Many times I feel like I'm dreaming. 3 years ago I woke up on Lonely Mountain. Military counselor gave me a letter written by you. You said that my future had nothing to do with you. Li Tianlan said softly, I thought about it for a long time. In the past 3 years, even when I was repracticing martial arts, I was still thinking about it. I didn't understand why you were so nice to me, and I didn't understand why you suddenly told me that my future had nothing to do with you. He pulled Qin Weibai up from his body. His expression became extremely solemn. Qin Weibai had never seen such an expression from Li Tianlan. The atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. In the frozen atmosphere, Li Tianlan's voice sounded, serious and almost solemn. Little Bai, will you leave me? Qin Weibai's body shook violently. She looked into Li Tianlan's eyes. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm. In this pair of eyes, Qin Weibai almost saw the same deep affection as herself. She laughed. At this moment she seemed to really feel that everything was worth it. I won't. Qin Weibai said softly, I really won't. Li Tianlan smiled and said softly, I thought that when I came back from the polar region I saw you on the sea and it was the last time I saw you in my life. On the sea. Qin Weibai's tone was a little confused. When I was on the sea I encountered a rainstorm. After the rainstorm there was a rainbow and a mirage. Li Tianlan whispered, you're in the mirage wearing red clothes? Qin Weibai's body became completely stiff in an instant. Li Tianlan could clearly feel that her body temperature seemed to become extremely cold in an instant. It was an indescribable despair and absurdity. And fear. What's wrong? Li Tianlan's face changed. Qin Weibai didn't speak for a long time, as if she had lost her soul. Red clothes. She looked at Li Tianlan in a daze for a long time and then asked softly. Li Tianlan frowned and said yes. Qin Weibai smiled. Her smile was a little sad. What's wrong? Li Tianlan frowned. No. Qin Weibai shook her head reluctantly. Her face was pale and her body temperature was still cold. Nothing. She sat on Li Tianlan's lap, her body a little shaky. Li Tianlan's words were like thunder, echoing repeatedly in her mind. Red clothes? She didn't know what Li Tianlan saw on the sea. But she was sure that what Li Tianlan saw was not herself. Absolutely. Not herself. In her life, she only wore red clothes in the Sky Academy. Chapter 338. Wang Tianzong did not go to Yuzhou to attend this meeting, which was destined to be extremely sensitive and even involved the overall situation. Although the outcome of the meeting was still unclear, he was very clear about the general direction of the meeting. The attack on Li Honghe failed. This meeting would not be a good thing for the Wang family of Beihai. So he stayed in Mount Dibing to accompany Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice had a fever. The body of an ordinary person bore the sword intent of the peak of the invincible realm. It was fine in normal days, but when the sword intent moved, the shortcomings of the body immediately began to appear in all aspects. Summer Solstice's body also became very weak. At this time, if nothing major happened, Wang Tianzong did not want to leave Mount Dibing. The night gradually deepened. Time passed from evening to midnight. Wang Tianzong's brows had been frowning slightly unconsciously. The desk lamp was on in the bedroom. The sound of the waves hitting Mount Dibing outside the dark window echoed on the mountain, like a magnificent and delicate music, grand and mysterious. Wang Tianzong stood in front of the window and looked at the sea under the curtain of night outside. He seemed a little uneasy. "Are you sleeping?" Xia Ji walked out of the bathroom with a pale face, wiped her wet long hair and asked softly. "I'm still waiting for a result." Wang Tianzong turned around and looked at his wife apologetically. He could roughly guess the result of the conference in Yuzhou. However, a general idea and a concrete idea were two completely different concepts. "Oh." Summer Solstice went to bed, took off her bathrobe under the quilt, and waved to Wang Tianzong. "Come on." Wang Tianzong turned to the bed and hugged his wife's soft body without saying anything. "We're going to lose a lot this time, right?" Summer Solstice leaned in Wang Tianzong's arms and asked in a low voice. She doesn't understand politics. But she knew Li Honghe's status and achievements in Jianghu state. Wang Tianzong's attack on Li Honghe failed. The Wang family of Beihai must pay for this. The price paid by the Wang family of Beihai was a chance for the Li family, which was at the end of its rope. Success or failure was so subtle. The Li family, which had been glorious for hundreds of years, still existed even though it was in dire straits. Whether it was a smooth road or a cliff ahead of the Li family would depend on Li Tianlan in the future. But now it was tied to Li Honghe. Success or failure, life or death, it was so direct. The actual loss won't be too much, but it won't be too little either. Wang Tianzong shook his head. "Zhejiang?" Summer Solstice asked after a moment of silence. "It's hard to say." Wang Tianzong hesitated. Wu Jingmin should leave Jianghu this time. Jing Exang could stay, but his future would be very difficult. However, there was still a chance. The Dongqing clan's position of supporting Li Tianlan had never changed. So, what about the Bai family? Wang Tianzong thought of some rumors and the conflict between Bai Qingqian and Dongqing Wudi. Under the moonlight, his face gradually became serious. At least in those rumors, Bai Qingqian seemed to care more about Li Tianlan than Dongqing Wudi. So the Bai family would definitely take action. The giant group was powerful and deep-rooted. On the surface, they were no less than the Southeast group and the Prince group, and even better in some aspects. However, this kind of alliance group was too loose and bloated, so that although they were powerful, their cohesion and combat effectiveness were always average. This was a shortcoming that everyone could see. The three pillars of the giant group could definitely see it. So they wanted to change. And now, these three pillars of wealthy families had undoubtedly put their chips on the Li family. The Zhou family was moving. The Dongqing clan was moving. The Bai family was moving, but the time was not right. Wang Tianzong thought of Bai Zhanfang, the top leader of Yuzhou, who was called the governor of Yuzhou. His mind became clearer and clearer. Bai Zhanfang, Bai Qingqian. Among the three pillars of the giant group, the father and daughter were the most perfect in connecting the past and the future. Bai Zhanfang had long reached the age of retirement. After this term was over, he would definitely have to retire. Bai Qingqian was now the top leader of Guangdong, and she used to be the governor of Qinzhou. She had been the governor for 4 years and the top leader of the province for 6 years. After this session, Bai Qingqian would have enough seniority and age. Although she was a woman, her means and ability had always been recognized by the higher-ups. At that time, her further conditions would be completely mature. Wang Tianzong could almost guess the direction of Bai Qingqian's office. She would not go to Yuzhou, and the rules would not allow her to go to Yuzhou. The most likely place for her to go was the southeast. It could even be said that only the southeast. Whether it was Wuyue or Huading, they could accommodate a new member of the decision-making committee. If Bai Qingqian completed her advancement in the southeast, the entire southeast would be in chaos. The southeast would be in chaos. The Wang family of Beihai would also be in chaos. Li Honghe returned to Yuzhou this time to take advantage of the giant group and plan the southeast with Jianghu as the base. Wang Tianzong smiled. There was a kind of persistent and resolute emotion in his eyes, a little cold and stern but no anger. He didn't blame Li Honghe. The Wang family of Beihai and the Li family had been entangled for too many years. At this point there was no way back for both sides. Li Honghe might feel guilty, but he had no choice but to make the best of the mistake. The Wang family of Beihai was destined to gain nothing in tonight's meeting. Not only would they gain nothing, but they would even widen the cracks in the Wang family of Beihai when they paid a price. The Li family rose again in the southeast. The Wang family of Beihai was in turmoil. The giant group intervened in the southeast. As Zhou Yuanshan took office. 3 years later, if Bai Qingqian succeeded in the southeast, other groups in Zhongzhou state would certainly not let go of this opportunity. The southeast would naturally become everyone's goal. All the crises that Wang Tianzong had been struggling to suppress were now getting closer and closer. He had only 3 years now. And the huge crisis was constantly clear. At present it seemed to be unstoppable. Summer solstice slept quietly beside him, carefree. Wang Tianzong lowered his head and touched his wife's pale face, his eyes gentle. It was past 12 o'clock in the morning. The meeting in Yuzhou had been going on for nearly 12 hours, and there was still no clear news. Wang Tianzong was still waiting. Not only him. At present, everyone who was qualified to play in Zhongzhou state was waiting. They were waiting for the end of this extraordinary meeting. They were waiting for the latest changes in the situation in the southeast. Time passed slowly. At 1 o'clock in the morning. At 2 o'clock in the morning. At 3 o'clock in the morning. The meeting seemed to have no sign of ending at all. Zhongzhou state was still calm. But with every minute that passed, the tension that permeated the land of Zhongzhou state seemed to increase a little. Except for a few people involved, no one knew what kind of debate, confrontation were going on inside the mysterious red wall in the hidden dragon sea of Yuzhou. At 5 o'clock in the morning. When all the people waiting for the news were sleepless all night, the meeting that lasted for 16 hours finally came to an end. And the results of the meeting were spread to the core of the entire Zhongzhou state as soon as possible. This was a meeting in which everyone gained something, but there were few winners. After more than 20 years. Li Honghe, who put on the marshal's military uniform again, appeared in the solemn conference room in the hidden dragon sea. President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou state personally helped Li Honghe into the conference room. At the beginning of the meeting, Dongqing Wudi, the current minister of the army headquarters, severely criticized the practices of the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City, and even directly questioned what the intentions of the two forces were. Bai Zhanfeng, the top leader of Yuzhou, who was also one of the leaders of the giant group, was more aggressive. He asked directly whether Beihai was still Beihai of Zhongzhou state. Could Kunlun City still shoulder the responsibility of guarding Zhongzhou state? The patriarch of the Bai family, who had dominated Yuzhou for many years and was known as the governor of Yuzhou city, had a hot temper. As a member of parliament, he dared to oppose the directors. Now that the truth was on his side, he would not be polite. He said that Senior Li was the god of war who had guarded Zhongzhou state for decades and had made great contributions. What did Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai want to do by attacking him in his old age? Were they afraid of something? Or were they instructed by someone, or did they make a deal? These accusations were almost tantamount to pointing at the noses of Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai and accusing them of treason. The other leader of the giant group, the speaker of the Zhou family, who ranked second only to Dongqing Wudi among the directors, was milder. But no matter how mild he was still questioning. He was the oldest leader in the giant group. When he spoke last, he made a summary of the speeches of Dongqing Wudi and Bai Zhanfeng. His wording was very euphemistic. Just when everyone thought that the speaker of the Zhou family was giving Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai a dignified way out, the speaker suddenly showed his loftiness. What do you want to do by attacking the old man who has made great contributions to Zhongzhou state and protecting Kunlun City? What did Senior Li do to Zhongzhou state? Can Gu Xingyun live up to his military uniform by doing this? Did the Wang family of Beihai fail to live up to the trust of Zhongzhou state? These were the original words of the gentle leader. Every word was like a knife. Neither Wang Tianzong nor Gu Xingyun attended this meeting in Yuzhou. Gu Qianchuan came to Yuzhou instead of Gu Xingyun. In the face of the three leaders' doubts and great pressure, Gu Qianchuan, who had never appeared on such an occasion, was at a loss. It was impossible for him to admit such a thing. But he could not deny anything since Li Honghe was there. However, since Wang Qianzong and Gu Xingyun were not there, at least there was room for this matter to be delayed. Both the Special Warfare Group and the Southeast Group said that they did not know what had happened. But if it was true, they were willing to apologize to Senior Li and compensate him. It was bullshit to say that they did not know what had happened. Apologies were empty. Only compensation was real. Real and not empty. Gu Qianchuan, who had calmed down, found an opportunity to question Situ Tsangyue, the governor of Sai City, who also attended the meeting. What was the intention of firing at one's own people with a murderous weapon? The meeting lasted for 16 hours. All the questions, arguments, and confrontations eventually turned into compromises. The meeting finally came to an official conclusion at dawn. Situ Tsangyue, the governor of Sai City, handed over the murderous weapon-setting son of Jianghu State and let Kunlun City take charge of it. Wu Jingmin, the head of Jianghu province, was transferred from Jianghu to the cabinet as a deputy minister. The governor of Jiangnan province, Su Xinghe, was transferred to Jianghu as the first secretary. Zhou Yuanshan, the top leader of Luojing City in the Central Plains, entered Jianghu and was appointed as the deputy secretary, deputy governor, and acting governor. The commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, Ning Ziyuan, was transferred. He didn't have a clear position for the time being. However, all the higher-ups knew that his next position would be the commander of the Tianan Freedom Corps. In addition, among the three provinces in the northeast, except for Guangdong, Liaodong and Heilong provinces also had major personnel changes. Zhang Qi of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters made a self-reflection at the meeting and was given a demerit. In the meeting that same night, Jianghu State confirmed the reform of the Special Warfare System with Kunlun City as the core. After the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters, Jianghu State established the Northeast, Southwest and Northwest Special Warfare Headquarters. The candidate for the Minister of the Northeast Special Warfare Headquarters was Tribulation. The Minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters was temporarily designated as Shushan Nirvana, Swordmaster Wei Kunlun. Gu Qianchuan was the Minister of the Northwest Special Warfare Headquarters. And along with the establishment of the four major Special Warfare Headquarters, there was also a brand new organization that could be on the same level as the Special Warfare Headquarters. An institution that surprised everyone. Special Overwatch Council. It was responsible for monitoring the operation status of all special warfare agencies in its area. This was the most important compensation that the Li family got. The directors of the three special supervisory councils in the Northwest, Southwest, and Northeast were all the first directors of the Special Warfare Headquarters. Only the Southeast. The first director of the Southeast Special Supervisory Council was not Zhang Qi. Was Li Honghe. After returning to Yuzhou in such a high-profile manner and struggling for 16 hours, the Li family finally had a foothold. They made a comeback. Chapter 339. It was no exaggeration to say that the 16-hour fierce debate and game in Yuzhou was definitely a meeting that could be recorded in the history of Jianghu State. Too many things had happened before and after 16 hours. The attack on Li Honghe was the cause. It ended with the Li family's comeback. The two sides of the Li family's survival affected the great changes in the pattern of the entire southeast. Wu Jingmin, who was deeply rooted in Jianghu and could be called a local tyrant, entered Yuzhou province and became the deputy prime minister of the cabinet. The commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, Ning Ziyuan, was transferred. The special warfare system was being reformed. The Overwatch Council appeared before everyone's eyes. While the situation in the southeast was in turmoil, the northeast of Jianghu State was also in turmoil. The top leaders of Liaodong and Heilong provinces had been reshuffled, and the official documents had been issued. In addition to the reshuffling of the top leaders who were destined to appear in front of the world, the directors of the Special Operations Bureau of Liaodong and Heilong provinces had also secretly changed their faces. Gain and loss. This was the theme that ran through the entire meeting. The Li family gained something, but the transfer of Wu Jingmin and Ning Ziyuan was also a loss. The Wang family of Beihai gained something. After having no choice but to let the power of the giant group and the Li family infiltrate into Jianghu, the Black Dragon province had quietly been replaced by the lineal descendants of the Wang family of Beihai. But compared with the power of a province and the chaotic situation that the southeast would face, the gains and losses of the Wang family of Beihai were obviously unbalanced. Kunlun City also gained something. The murderous weapon-setting son, which they had been plotting for many years, finally arrived in Kunlun City from Sai City, which was extremely important to them. However, handing over the Southeast Overwatch Council to the Li family was clearly not what they wanted to see. The giant group also gained something. Ning Ziyuan was transferred. General Wang Wantian, the commander of the Blood Battalion of the Border Control Corps, was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations as the commander. This had been regarded by the outside world as the first step of Dongqing Wudi's strong control of the military. But Wang Wantian's transfer to the Eastern Theater of Operations was also the beginning of the Dongqing clan's abandonment of the dominance of the Border Control Corps. This was bound to be a far-reaching meeting. Many of the effects would only appear after several years or even longer. This time, only the Jianghu and Eastern Theater of Operations were moving in the southeast. However, with the emergence of the Overwatch Council and the resurgence of the Li family, the entire southeast was shrouded in a fog. Regardless of whether it was the people involved or the bystanders, no one could see the fog clearly. Ning Ziyuan couldn't see through the fog either. But everything in the southeast had nothing to do with him. The day after the meeting, he walked into the army headquarters building and got his new appointment from Dongqing Wudi. He was going to take off the military uniform that he had worn for most of his life, take off the rank of general that he had long been accustomed to, and head for the Southern Heaven region. All of his files will be sealed in the top-secret file indefinitely. From that moment on, he had nothing to do with the Southeast or even Zhongzhou State. He was the commander of the Tianan Freedom Corps. He would lead the elites there to fight against the Annan State and the Purgatory of Heaven capital. Until Tianan became a new province of Zhongzhou State. Open up new territories. This was the duty of a soldier, and its weight was comparable to that of protecting the country. However, only a small number of people understood the deeper meaning behind this transfer. To be enemies with the Purgatory of Heaven capital. This sentence implied too much malice and conspiracy. It was already night in Wuxia. In the dead of night, the courtyard of the Eastern Theater of Operations was filled with the vicissitudes of life and loneliness. The lights in Ning Ziyuan's mansion were off. Ning Ziyuan, dressed in plain clothes, stood in front of the window and looked up at the starry night sky. This was the last night he would stay in Wuxia Jinling and the Eastern Theater of Operations. Tomorrow morning, the new commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, Wang Wantian, would arrive in Jinling. After the handover of work between the two sides, he would set off for Tianan. The army ministry urged him urgently. It seemed that both the giant group and the southeast group wanted him to leave Jinling as soon as possible. Tomorrow had not come yet. Today had passed. The Eastern Theater of Operations held a simple but grand farewell banquet. Now that the banquet was over, Ning Ziyuan didn't know what to do for a while. Tonight, he was neither the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations nor the commander of the Tianan Freedom Corps. He was just Ning Ziyuan. Ning Ziyuan stood quietly. The cold moon on the horizon rose and began to set again. The courtyard of the Eastern Theater of Operations became quieter and quieter. Ning Ziyuan sighed. His eyes showed no reluctance to say goodbye to the past or excitement to welcome the future. They were dull and almost empty. Insomnia? A somewhat hoarse voice sounded behind Ning Ziyuan without warning. Ning Ziyuan turned around reflexively. The living room of the mansion was dark. A man's figure appeared on the sofa without anyone noticing. He raised his hand and waved it. In the night, it could be vaguely seen that he was holding a bottle of wine. "What are you doing here?" Ning Ziyuan frowned and quietly closed the curtains in front of the window. "Don't be so nervous." The black shadow laughed in a low voice. His hoarse voice was a little magnetic. "I have wine. Do you want a drink?" Ning Ziyuan came over and sat opposite the black shadow. He didn't turn on the light. In the dark, his tone was with suppressed anger. "You came to me just to drink with me? Don't get excited." The black shadow said with a smile, "I happened to come to Jinling to patrol. I knew that you were leaving tomorrow, so I came to have a look. Don't worry, no one will find out that I have been here. In the past. Now is not the past." Ning Ziyuan interrupted the black shadow's voice with some gloominess. He used to be the commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations and a core minister of the Wang family of Beihai. The black shadow in front of him was also an important figure in the Wang family of Beihai. The two had occasional contact. Even if they were discovered, it would not be a big deal. But it was now. He left Jinling. It was almost equivalent to leaving the Southeast group. He was originally a member of the Li family. After the collapse of the Li family, this identity did not seem obvious. But now the Li family reappeared. If he went to Tianan, it was tantamount to re-entering the Li family's camp. Now he was meeting the man in front of him. Once he was discovered, it was very likely to cause a stir. The living room was quiet for a while. The Black Shadow shook his head and then said seriously, "Don't worry, there will be no problem. Don't be careless," Ning Ziyuan said in a low voice. The Black Shadow in front of him was Migrez, who Li Honghe personally mentioned to him in Linhan. He was different from Ning Ziyuan, whose code name was Alcade. He was different from Wu Jingmin and even Zhang Qi. Migrez's identity was the most hidden. Everything he showed to the world was completely flawless. Even Zhang Qi, the current minister of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters, might be exposed. But Migrez would not. As long as he did not stand out himself, he would hide forever and did not have to worry about being called a traitor. With such a hidden identity, he was bound to play a greater role in the future of the Li family. He was even more useful than Ning Ziyuan. "I won't come if I have nothing to do. But you will leave tomorrow. Time is a little tight, so I can only take some risks to come here." In the darkness, Migrez put down the bottle in his hand and took out a business card from his pocket. "In recent years, I have dealt with a lot of things in Tianan on behalf of Tianzong. So I have made some other arrangements secretly. When you arrive in Tianan, you can contact this person." Migrez said softly, "This is a small gift. When the time is right, you can give it to Tianlan for me. As his uncle, I didn't talk too much with him when I met him last time." "Have you met Tianlan?" Ning Ziyuan's tone was a little surprised. "I met him once, but we didn't talk much." Migrez shook his head. "You are the most suitable person to go to Tianan at present. Tianzong's mind is a little messy these days. Under the guidance of Wang Qinglei, he really wants to send you to Tianan to be the enemy of the Purgatory of Heaven capital." Wang Qinglei said it was a dog-eat-dog situation. "Ah, it's ridiculous." Ning Ziyuan took a deep look at him. He could know the content of the conversation between Wang Qinglei and Wang Tianzong. This was enough to show Migrez's status in the Wang family of Beihai. "Tianzong trusts you so much." Ning Ziyuan's tone was a little emotional. In the current situation, if Tianan was the most worthy place of Zhongzhou State's attention, then Migrez was the most special person in Tianan. He was the only person who could wander between the Wang family of Beihai, the Li family, and the Purgatory of Heaven capital and could be completely trusted. He dealt with a lot of things on behalf of Wang Tianzong. God knew what he did for the Li family when dealing with those things. "I'm different from you." Migrez was silent for a while, then slowly said, "At least on the surface, I have nothing to do with the Li family. You're really different." Ning Ziyuan nodded. Migrez smiled and said calmly, "Let's not talk about this. I'm here today to tell you that after you go to Tianan, you should act quickly. Although the Li family has made a comeback, the situation is not good. Whether Jianghu can be stable or not depends on Tianan. If there is no accident, the next few years should be the best opportunity for the Li family. You don't have any scruples in Tianan." "Scruples?" "Scruples." The hall began to become quiet. Ning Ziyuan seemed to really have scruples. After a long silence, he said flatly, "What scruples can I have?" "That's good." Migrez smiled and said, "Even if there is, it should not exist for the time being." Ning Ziyuan narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. "Some time ago, the power of the Purgatory of Heaven capital in Tianan was adjusted. Do you know about this?" Migrez asked. Ning Ziyuan raised the corner of his eyes, nodded, and said expressionlessly, "I know. Sunluo Hall is stationed in Tianan now. So it's perfect for you to go to Tianan at this time." Migrez smiled and said, "You lead the Tianan Freedom Corps and there are old subordinates in Tianan who are most worthy of your trust. Everything is promising." Ning Ziyuan did not speak. His most trusted old subordinates. Naturally, they were the real direct subordinates he had cultivated in the Eastern Theater of Operations for many years. And these direct subordinates were all sent to East Island in the final battle of Heaven capital 3 years ago. At that time, everyone in Zhongzhou State was talking about the madness of Ning Ziyuan and the Eastern Theater of Operations. And the final battle of Heaven capital did not disappoint anyone. More than 100 experts above the fire-flaming realm in the Eastern Theater of Operations died, in Heaven capital. This directly led to Ning Ziyuan's difficult life in the Eastern Theater of Operations in the past 3 years because he had lost a large number of elite direct subordinates. Many people laughed at Ning Ziyuan. They said that he was a great general who was willing to send his trusted subordinates to die. However, very few people knew that Ning Ziyuan had indeed sent his most trusted troops to their deaths. But at the same time he gave them a new life. After the new life, they were no longer soldiers of Zhongzhou State. Today, 3 years later, those who died in the battle, and disappeared in the battlefield of Heaven Capital were still alive and formed an organization famous in the dark world. Purgatory of Heaven Capital. Sunluo Hall. And all his decisions were based on Migreza's suggestions, and what he did was even crazier than Migreza's request. The plan had begun long ago. 3 years ago or even before that. Chapter 340. In Wang Xingxiao's memory, Wang Tianzong seemed to be looking at the sea forever. The entire Beihai province was like 2 islands floating in the sea. Therefore, the sea in Beihai province was extraordinarily magnificent. Wang Tianzong often stood alone on the stage of Formidable Person and looked at the sea. The ancient stone platform, the raging sea, and the silent man. A man who was silent like a mountain and indomitable, blending the sea with the history and glory of the Wang family of Beihai. In Wang Xingxiao's mind, this was the most specific and vivid image of his father. The stage of Formidable Person was empty and ancient. The undulating sound of the tide spread here very clearly. Wang Xingxiao, who returned to Beihai province from Huading, boarded the stage of Formidable Person and looked at Wang Tianzong's back. Wang Tianzong's back was not outstanding. The stage of Formidable Person was not outstanding either. But amidst the ordinariness, it seemed that even the vast sea had become ordinary and unremarkable. In this vast and ancient space, the invincible sword intent, the power that could overturn the imperial court, the matchless and ambitious heroes, the devastatingly beautiful women, and everything else seemed to become plain and ordinary. Hundreds of years of romance and glory of the Wang family of Beihai gathered here. It was too heavy here, so it looked particularly solemn. Every time Wang Xingxiao came here, he could clearly feel a kind of power called responsibility. This power scared him and made him crazy. Only by standing here could he truly feel the weight of the future of the Wang family of Beihai on him. That kind of weight suppressed his soul and made him not dare to stop for a moment. It made him desperately want to reach his strongest state. Because he knew very well that his father, who was looking at the sea here, would eventually grow old and die, and he would take his place. He would watch the sea his father had been looking at all his life and bear the responsibility he was bearing now. Inheritance, responsibility, sustenance, in the wash of honor and history, everything was clear and almost naked. Wang Xingxiao took a deep breath, walked to Wang Tianzong and whispered, "Dad." Wang Tianzong nodded and asked calmly, "Just arrived." "Just arrived." Wang Xingxiao nodded. "How is Huading?" Wang Tianzong glanced at his son. This question was deep. But as the future patriarch of the Wang family of Beihai, Wang Xingxiao was destined not to be a martial arts maniac who only knew martial arts. Therefore he thought about it seriously and said slowly, "It's still stable. Uncle Yu and Uncle Lu are enough to stabilize the overall situation, and second uncle is the mediator. We have developed well in Huading in recent years. Although the conference in Yuzhou province has some influence, it's not a big one." The second uncle was Wang Xiaoyao. Uncle Yu was the current mayor of Huading, Yu Chuanguang. Uncle Lu was Lu Shuanghua, the southern intelligence giant in charge of Jiangnan. These 3 people were now in Huading, and they were the cornerstone of the Wang family of Beihai's power to stabilize Huading. With them, no matter how much the Wang family of Beihai lost in the Yuzhou conference, Huading would not have any problems. Wang Xingxiao's eyes were a little confused. He didn't believe that his father didn't know about this. Then what did he mean by asking this? Thinking of the recent rumors in some top circles in Huading, Wang Xingxiao narrowed his eyes. Wang Tianzong seemed to know what Wang Xingxiao was thinking. He nodded and said, "Pure light is going to move." Black Dragon Province? Yes, the Longjiang base city. Wang Tianzong said. Longjiang and Black Dragon were 2 names for the same place. The Longjiang province was the new name of the Black Dragon province. On the current map of Zhongzhou province, only the old map would mark the Black Dragon province, and the new map had changed it to the Longjiang province. When the Li family made a comeback in Jianghu, Sai City, which had always had a great say in the northeast, also gave enough bargaining chips. Liaodong belonged to Kunlun City. The leadership of the Longjiang province was in the hands of the Wang family of Beihai. The Wang family of Beihai naturally needed a loyal and outstanding person to preside over the overall situation of the Longjiang province. Yu Chuanguang was undoubtedly the best choice. He was qualified enough to be transferred from the mayor of the most developed municipality. If it was the governor, it was not even a transfer. Therefore, Yu Chuanguang would definitely become the top leader of the Longjiang province. Although his rank would not change, his status would be different. However, Wang Xingxiao was a little hesitant. He hesitated and said slowly, "I'm afraid Uncle Yu doesn't want to move." The Southeast Group had been brooding about losing Huading. Over the years, it had never given up fighting for the leadership of Huading. Especially in recent years, the Wang family of Beihai had established a cooperative relationship with Kunlun City. Lu Shuanghua's Jiangnan society entered Huading forcefully. After Mayor Yu Chuanguang's foundation was stable, the remaining forces of the Southeast Group began to gradually become active. In 3 years, Huading was extremely lively. It was not realistic to take back Huading now, but as long as they waited for 2 or 3 years and operated well, there was a good chance that Yu Chuanguang would replace Huading's current top leader, Zhong Yuwei, and enter the decision-making committee. If he was asked to leave Huading at this time, he would inevitably have other ideas. "He's the most suitable candidate," Wang Qianzong said expressionlessly, looking determined. "And it's also a good thing for him to leave Huading now. There's no hope for him to stay in Huading." Wang Xingxiao's face changed and he said thoughtfully, "Wu Yu?" Wang Qianzong nodded. Although the Wang family of Beihai was the leader of the Southeast Group, the Southeast Group also involved the Wang family of Beihai to some extent. At least when there were internal problems in the Wang family of Beihai, some big shots of the Southeast Group couldn't express their opinions, let alone change the plan at will. Wang Qinglei officially entered the decision-making committee 2 years ago. In the change of office 3 years later, no matter what problems there were in the Wang family of Beihai, the Southeast Group was bound to push Wang Qinglei to the top. This was related to the survival of the whole group. The whole group must ensure the right to speak after the change of office. Pushing Wang Qinglei was the most sure, and other people were not qualified enough. If they gave up on Wang Qinglei now, time would be too tight. Even if the Southeast Group was strong, it would be difficult for them to have enough time and resources to nurture another giant candidate. This was something that had been decided many years ago, and it was not easy to change it now. If the Southeast Group pushed Wang Qinglei, it would be difficult to take care of Yu Chuanguang's promotion. Wang Qinglei himself would not allow this situation to happen. Therefore, Yu Chuanguang's pursuit of the top leader of Huading was doomed to fail. Even in the next session, the Southeast Group still had no plan to completely take back Huading. And Huading was not the only way to enter the decision-making committee. Longjiang Province was also a good choice. Longjiang was close to Beihai Province and had a vast territory. If Yu Chuanguang managed it as the new back garden of the Southeast Group, he might have a chance 3 years later. "I'll talk to him about this when I have time," Wang Qianzong said. Longjiang Province was equally important to him. It was the closest province to Beihai Province. If it was managed well, it could be regarded as the periphery of Beihai Province. And Longjiang was close to Guangdong. If Yu Chuanguang could find a chance to check and balance by Qingqian of the giant group, the Southeast Group would have another bargaining chip in the hands of the general change of office 3 years later. From this point of view, the Wang family of Beihai did not lose out by giving up Jianghu to get Longjiang. Even Jianghu was not completely abandoned. Zhou Yuanshan entered Jianghu as the governor. The top leader was Su Xinghe, the former governor of Jiangnan Province. Jiangnan had always been the traditional territory of the Southeast Group. There was no doubt about Su Xinghe's position. It was still unknown who Jianghu belonged to. "Will you talk to him yourself?" Wang Xingxiao was a little stunned. Wang Qianzong nodded and said nothing more. Wang Xingxiao fell silent. After a long time he hesitated and asked, "Dad, you and second uncle?" He didn't finish his words. He had rarely been in the Wang family of Beihai in recent years. But he vaguely noticed that there was something wrong between his father and second uncle. Especially after Wang Qinglei entered the decision-making committee. Now almost everyone in Zhongzhou State noticed that there was something wrong with the Wang family of Beihai. Although it was not completely out of control for the time being, it was not something that Wang Tianzong could suppress alone. The atmosphere between the lineal descendants of the Wang family of Beihai and the major branches became more and more delicate. Even the relationship between Wang Xiaoyao and Wang Tianzong, the two brothers, had become a little strange. For example, if it had been before, Wang Tianzong would not have talked to him personally about the matter regarding Yu Chuanguang. Wang Xiaoyao was enough. Wang Xingxiao could even see the crack between his father and second uncle. For the Wang family of Beihai, this was even a fatal crack. Wang Tianzong twitched the corner of his mouth, glanced at his son and said calmly, "Do your own thing. Don't think too much about the rest." Wang Xingxiao wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. "What's the matter?" Wang Tianzong asked. I'm going to meditate on the stage of formidable person for a few days and adjust my state to deal with the final maneuver of the two academies. Wang Xingxiao took a deep breath and said calmly. It was close to the end of July. There were about 10 days before the final maneuver. Wang Xingxiao hoped to use the huge psychological pressure on the stage of formidable person to make himself stronger. Wang Tianzong nodded and suddenly said, "Have you ever thought about what will happen if you lose?" Wang Xingxiao suddenly turned to look at his father and said seriously, "Do you think I will lose? If you are sure to win, you won't come back at this time." Wang Tianzong said calmly. Wang Xingxiao was silent. "It's not terrible to lose." Wang Tianzong said, "I lost in the past. The unique skills of the Li family are indeed more flexible than ours under the invincible realm. But as long as we are not dead, we have a chance to turn the tables." Wang Xingxiao took a deep look at his father and asked, "How strong is Li Tianlan now?" "It's hard to say." Wang Tianzong shook his head. "But it's not impossible for you to lose to him. I may leave in a few days and I should be able to catch up with the final maneuver of the two academies. If I can't make it, you have to be careful of Li Tianlan. Now he is likely to." Before Wang Tianzong finished his words, the phone suddenly rang. In the sound of the waves, the ringtone of the mobile phone was faint but clear. Wang Tianzong calmly took out the mobile phone and answered, saying hello. On the phone, the voice of Lu Shuanghua, who controlled the largest civilian intelligence organization in the south of Jianghu state, sounded. "Your Majesty, my people have confirmed Yue Tong's location." Lu Shuanghua smiled bitterly and said with some difficulty, "After she came to Huading until Li Tianlan went to Lin and she had been living with him." His words were vague. But Wang Tianzong instantly understood what he wanted to say. The muscles at the corners of his eyes twitched, and an extremely sharp cold light flashed in his eyes. Lu Shuanghua did not continue. Wang Tianzong was also silent and finally hung up. "That." Wang Xingxiao looked at Wang Tianzong. "It's all right." Chapter 341. When countless reporters and media were still digging for the truth of the disappearance of Lonely Mountain overnight, the cabinet, the Jianghu provincial government, and the Lin and municipal government had clearly issued a document. In the most official and formal manner, Lonely Mountain was completely removed from the tourist attractions of West Lake. It was no longer a tacit attitude under the guise of renovation. On the edge of the ruins of Lonely Mountain, a sign of a military restricted area was set up. The address of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters was in Huading, and Lonely Mountain would become the office of the Southeast Special Warfare Supervision Council. The Supervision Council was a new institution of the Special Warfare System of Jianghu State, different from the Special Warfare Headquarters. The emergence of the Special Warfare Headquarters was actually just the expansion of the power of the Special Warfare System. For the whole system, it was not big enough to subvert the fundamental rules. But the Procuratorate was different. It was a new institution. Different from the division of labor of the party committee and the government in the political circle, and different from the military generals and political generals in the army, the Supervision Council had a single function. In terms of duties, it was more similar to the Discipline Inspection Department, supervising the performance of their duties by various special warfare agencies. It was supervision. It only had the right to supervise. The emergence of any system or any new institution took a relatively long time to become mature and stable. So strictly speaking, the newly established Procuratorate, which only had the right to supervise but not the right to dispose, was actually in a very awkward position. The special warfare system was different from the military and the political circles. Its duties were secret, its power was hidden, and the rules were loose. So even if it had the right to supervise, the scope of supervision was somewhat vague. The director of the Procuratorate was at the same level as the director of the Special Warfare Headquarters, but he did not participate in the meetings of the decision-making committee, and there was no supervisory bureau under him. In addition to the Southeast, the director of the Special Warfare Headquarters concurrently served as the supervisory director in other regions. All this showed that Jianghu State was still in the stage of exploration and observation of this new institution. So Li Honghe's appointment as the director of the Southeast Supervision Council did not bring much power to the Li family. What this position brought to the Li family was more like a reliable protective umbrella. At least when the Supervision Council still existed, neither the Wang family of Beihai nor Kunlun City could join forces to attack the Li family again, because it was equivalent to blatantly trampling on the rules that everyone was abiding by. And with only a dozen people left, The Li family could not use their limited power to do anything against the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. The situation would roughly stabilize. The so-called balance was like this. The current situation was neither good nor bad for the Li family. There were no unexpected surprises, but it was completely in line with expectations. After more than 20 years of dormancy and forbearance, the Li family reappeared on the stage of Jianghu state. This seemed to be an inconspicuous step, but it was the real foundation and starting point. Now it was no longer Li Honghe who stood at the starting point. It was Li Tianlan. Perhaps it was not until today that Li Tianlan really began to shoulder the Li family's burden. Before the Yuzhou conference, Li Tianlan was the hope of the Li family. After the Yuzhou conference, Li Honghe completely fell from the invincible realm. Li Tianlan was everything to the Li family. There shouldn't be too many changes in Jianghu in the next few years. Even the entire Jianghu state, if there are no accidents, will be peaceful for a few years. There are good and bad sides to peace. The good side is that it's safe enough, but the bad side is that it's a pool of stagnant water without any waves. Naturally, there will be no chance. It was a sunny morning in late July. The warm sunshine outside the window shone into the bedroom. In front of the mirror, Qin Weibai, who had just gotten up and her hair was still a little messy, was tidying up his suit for him. She said softly, "That's why I want you to go to Tiannan. No matter what happens in Jianghu state, Tiannan is destined to become another focus of the dark world. The Li family can only develop tepidly in Jianghu. If it wants to rise, it can only be possible in Tiannan, which is destined to be in constant turmoil." Li Tianlan answered and loosened the tie around his neck. Today he had a series of extremely important social engagements, so he was dressed very formally. He wore a black suit and leather shoes, looking calm and sharp. After the Yuzhou conference, the personnel transfer went quickly. Zhou Yuanshan had already come to Jianghu from Luojing 3 days ago. On the first day of the new governor of Jianghu, he came to visit Li Honghe and made an appointment with Li Tianlan to meet today. It was an unusual meeting. Because Wu Jingmin hadn't left yet. Wu Jingmin hadn't left, so the new governor of Jianghu, Su Xinghe, naturally couldn't come. Wu Jingmin hoped to make full use of these few days to create a situation beneficial to the Li family. So today, Li Tianlan would not only meet Zhou Yuanshan but also Wu Jingmin. To be exact, Wu Jingmin took Li Tianlan and Zhou Yuanshan to visit various powerful figures in Jianghu so that Li Tianlan and Zhou Yuanshan could get their support. Li Tianlan was a little upset. This was the first time he had contacted the high-level political forces of a province. He was not uneasy, but his heart was a little complicated. "There won't be any problem," Qin Weibai said softly. "Don't underestimate Zhou Yuanshan. As the leader fully supported by the giant group after 20 years, his ability and means are absolutely the best." After Wu Jingmin left, there would definitely be people in Jianghu who would change their stance, but there wouldn't be too many of them. Over the years, Wu Jingmin had been very good at controlling Jianghu. Most of Wu Jingmin's forces would support Zhou Yuanshan. At present, Jianghu was already the home ground of the giant group and the Li family. Although Su Xinghe of the Southeast Group occupied the position of the top leader, the biggest help was only Wang Jingxin. The battle between the two sides was destined to be long, and no one could crush the other side at once. But then again, as long as it was delayed, it would be beneficial to the Li family. The next 2 or 3 years were the rarest opportunities for the Li family. "Tianlan, don't worry about Jianghu for the time being. As long as you open up the situation in Tiannan, Jianghu will gradually stabilize. If possible, don't have any concerns. The most important thing is to strengthen yourself. You talk a little too much today." Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and said softly. Qin Weibai froze and suddenly fell silent. "Will you go to Huading with me?" Li Tianlan asked. The final maneuver of the 2 academies was about to begin. Today was also the last day he stayed in Lin'an. After meeting with the important members of Jianghu, he would return to Huading and East Emperor Palace, waiting for the start of the final maneuver of the 2 academies. "I'm going to leave for a while." Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's face attentively and said softly. "Today?" Li Tianlan was stunned for a while and then asked softly. After several days of tenderness and dependence on each other, Li Tianlan heard the parting without any psychological preparation. "Yes." Qin Weibai nodded and murmured, "I should have left a few days ago, but I've been reluctant to leave. Now I really can't delay it. I'll see you off." Li Tianlan's mouth moved and his voice suddenly became a little hoarse. "No, you go about your business. Flaming fire is by my side. Nothing will happen." Qin Weibai shook her head. The reason why I told you now is that I don't want you to see me off. I wanted to let someone else tell you before I left, but I was afraid that you would be angry. I'd better tell you myself. Li Tianlan didn't know what to say. He opened his hands and subconsciously held Qin Weibai's warm and soft body in his arms. Qin Weibai gently wrapped her arms around Li Tianlan's waist and said with a chuckle, "It's not life and death. Why are you so serious? Wait for me. I'll be back in 2 or 3 months at most. At that time I'll stay with you and won't go anywhere, okay?" "Okay," Li Tianlan said sullenly. Qin Weibai left his arms, took off a single Buddha bead from her wrist, handed it to Li Tianlan and said softly, "This is for you." "This is?" Li Tianlan was a little confused. "Great Master Wu Wei gave me the Buddha bead. It doesn't mean anything. It's a mascot. I don't like it very much, so I'll give it to you," Qin Weibai said carelessly, and her tone was very natural. Li Tianlan didn't think much and put it on his wrist. "Where are you going?" "Go back to the headquarters first." Qin Weibai hesitated. "The headquarters of Samsara doesn't mean much. It's time to give up. I'll go back again. After that I'll go directly to Snow Country." Li Tianlan nodded and looked at Qin Weibai in front of him. Qin Weibai stood quietly in the sun, beautiful and dreamy as if transparent. Today was the day of parting. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little tired and seemed to have no energy to do anything. "Go ahead. Today is very important to you." Qin Weibai took Li Tianlan's arm and pulled him out of the door. She said seriously, "I'll be back soon." Li Tianlan nodded. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally he turned and went downstairs. Qin Weibai went downstairs with him and watched Li Tianlan get into an Audi at the door. Qin Weibai looked tranquil and gentle. Li Tianlan looked back at her. Qin Weibai smiled and waved her hand. Everything was so natural as if it was the most ordinary parting. Li Tianlan got into the car. At that moment Qin Weibai only saw Li Tianlan's side face. She looked at him affectionately and in a trance. The Audi slowly left the villa area. Qin Weibai stood quietly, motionless like a sculpture. Such a simple parting. But it was the last glance. The light in Qin Weibai's bright eyes changed. All the emotions that pretended to be natural surged in her heart. As Li Tianlan left, she was close to collapse. She couldn't show her reluctance. She couldn't even show sadness. Because what she wanted to tell Li Tianlan was a very common parting. She knew what it meant. It was a deception, the cruelest deception. Because this seemingly casual parting this time, they would never be able to meet again. Cruel. But it was not the cruelest. She had seen the cruelest scene in Heaven Capital 3 years ago. That scene was not the moment when the woman in white pierced the long sword into Li Tianlan's chest. It was the scene after Li Tianlan fell from the air. That was the real cruelty. The Audi disappeared completely from her sight. All the reluctance, all the unwillingness and all the deep feelings completely collapsed in an instant. Qin Weibai had already burst into tears. She behaved so normally that she didn't even show a trace of reluctance to Li Tianlan. No reluctance was the real reluctance. She bit her lips hard and murmured softly, "I'm sorry." Chapter 342. It was like there would be no reunion and parting. There would be no afterlife in life. That was why Qin Weibai's profile was so clear. It was the last glance before parting. Qin Weibai stood quietly at the door of the villa. Li Tianlan's car had completely disappeared without a trace. There was a breeze in the sunny linen. The breeze blew the water of the West Lake and seemed to blow away all the spiritual qi in her. Qin Weibai's whole body became empty. There was no hope, no longing, no thoughts, no coldness and gentleness. She was like a body that had lost everything. She was still beautiful, but she was shaking with the wind. She still had too much to say. There were still too many things she wanted to do. But she couldn't say or do anything about it. She didn't even give Li Tianlan a serious hug or kiss. She behaved too normally. Only normality could make Li Tianlan believe in their future. But there was no future. Even this parting was so incomplete. Tears flowed down her delicate face and dripped on the ground. After all her emotions collapsed out of control, there was no pain in her heart, only numbness and emptiness, with a touch of indescribable coldness. Her body seemed to be weightless, floating with the wind, empty, getting higher and higher. There was no foundation or tie, no past and no future. Qin Weibai squatted down with her arms around her shoulders and lowered her head. She was silent, like a child who had been wronged. But what she suffered was not grievance, but the most heart-wrenching coldness and despair. The wind stopped. The wind rose again. Qin Weibai squatted at the door as still as a sculpture. Lin Fengting, who spent all his time in Lin and didn't say a word about the Li family's comeback, walked over quietly and whispered, "When will you go to Snow Country?" "Today." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and whispered. She was in a mess now, but she was unwilling to stand up. To be exact, she was too lazy to stand up. Since she knew there was no future, why did she care so much? "Shall I go with you?" Lin Fengting asked. "No need." Qin Weibai raised her head and looked into the distance. The villa area was very high. Staying at the door, she could clearly see the turbulent and swaying West Lake outside the villa. Her eyes were a little dazed, but her tone was very serious. She whispered, "Sir, please stay in Jianghu State for a few more days. It's not too late to set off after the final maneuver." Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows in confusion. "Snow Country has nothing to do with the final maneuver, right?" "It has something to do with Tianlan." Qin Weibai choked with sobs and took a deep breath. Her perfect and delicate face was like a pear blossom in the rain. There was a kind of softness in her. "I don't want him to go to Snow Country. After the final maneuver, he probably won't be able to go for a while." She knew very well what resistance Li Tianlan would encounter in the final maneuver. Li Baidian, Su Chu and Ning Chenxing were all severely injured. Yu Qingyan's realm was still low. Although her lethality was terrifying, it was not suitable for her to play in the final maneuver. Now in the East Emperor Palace, there were only Li Tianlan and Du Hanyin, who had barely broken through to the thunder-shocking realm. At most there was Dongqing Rushi. 3 people. However, the 3 of them would have to face 3 young forces. 3,000 Realms, Phantom Realm and Jilei Peak. Wang Xingxiao, Gu Hanshan, Song Xiai and Jiang Shanyu. Any one of them was powerful enough to look down on the young generation of Zhongzhou State. Qin Weibai had always been very confident in Li Tianlan. She did not think that Li Tianlan would lose, but confidence was not blind worship, so she did not think that Li Tianlan would win easily. If Li Tianlan wanted to win the final maneuver, he almost had to rely on his own strength to defeat the strongest of the young generation. The best outcome was that he would be seriously injured. At that time he naturally could not go to Snow Country. No matter what happened in Snow Country, he was powerless. Lin Fengting also understood what Qin Weibai meant. He was silent for a while, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. Finally, he said, "Have you ever thought that you might have underestimated Tianlan?" "Underestimated?" Qin Weibai turned her head and opened a pair of red and swollen but still bright and dreamy beautiful eyes. "Do you know how strong he is now?" Lin Fengting asked calmly. Qin Weibai was silent. She did not ask about Li Tianlan's current martial arts, and Li Tianlan did not say it. This matter was very important, but it was not the most important thing at the moment. "What do you think, sir?" Qin Weibai asked seriously. Lin Fengting was silent for a moment. He remembered Li Tianlan's performance when he was entangled with Wang Tianzong. In the monstrous sword intent, Li Tianlan directly entered the state of meditation. Lin Fengting could vaguely feel Li Tianlan's progress afterward, but when it happened he did not feel anything. Nothingness. Li Tianlan in meditation seemed to not exist at all, and his whole person seemed to completely dissipate between heaven and earth. At that time, Tianzong asked Tianlan a question. Lin Fengting said, "He asked Tianlan when he recultivated the 4 realms of martial arts." He paused and shook his head in confusion. Li Tianlan did give him a very strange feeling now, but he could not tell it, even though he had seen a few videos of Li Tianlan's moves. Great breakthroughs and great achievements are based on recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. Tianlan is now in the state after recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. "Don't you know what this means?" Lin Fengting asked. Qin Weibai's eyes changed and her eyes were full of vigor. After recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts, the word recultivation could be completely removed. After the 4 realms of martial arts, there was only the invincible realm. "Sir, do you mean that Tianlan is now in the invincible realm?" Qin Weibai's eyes were a little happy. The stronger her man was, the happier she would be. "Yes and no." Lin Fengting shook his head. "He is certainly not in the real invincible realm, but at least he is no longer in the thundershocking realm." Qin Weibai fell silent. "Even so, it is unlikely that he can win this maneuver unscathed," Qin Weibai whispered. Lin Fengting's eyes were deep and meaningful. Qin Weibai wanted to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. So she dragged the entire Samsara Palace to destruction. but it was related to the future of the Lin clan, so Lin Fengting had to protect her. In this case, some words did not need to be too clear. Lin Fengting smiled and changed the topic. What happened on Mount Dibbing was your doing, wasn't it? He said it vaguely. But Qin Weibai knew what he was talking about. Yes. Qin Weibai's tone was calm. How do you know summer solstice? Lin Fengting was a little curious. Summer solstice's strength was a secret of the Wang family of Beihai, and even some giants of Zhongzhou state were not very clear about it. When the four of them learned swordsmanship together, summer solstice's progress could even be said to be the fastest, but she never fought. The treason case on the border more than 20 years ago was the only time she fought. But that case itself had too many secrets, and Kunlun City could not publicize it, so few people knew the details of summer solstice. In any case, Qin Weibai should not know. Why don't I know? Qin Weibai asked. Lin Fengting fell silent. He was a little embarrassed. In fact, it did not matter why Qin Weibai knew summer solstice's strength. What mattered was whether the Wang family of Beihai knew that the sneak attack on summer solstice was actually the doing of the Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting did not expect this matter to be a secret, because the Samsara Palace hardly concealed it. Summer solstice could be said to be Wang Tianzong's reverse scale. In her current state, if she forced a fight, it would not be good. Wang Tianzong was not the kind of person who would not fight back after suffering a loss. In the upcoming final battle in the Dark World, the Samsara Palace, which had little hope of survival, provoked Wang Tianzong, and the hope of survival was now almost infinitely close to zero. Tianzong will go crazy. You didn't do this secretly. Lin Fengting shook his head, and his tone was a little complicated. I just gave him a chance to go crazy. Qin Weibai stood up and said in a flat tone, at this point, it's time for the Samsara Palace to give up some less important things. I'm waiting for Wang Tianzong's revenge and even prepared clues for him. Let's see if the intelligence system of the Wang family of Beihai is really so pervasive. Lin Fengting instinctively did not want to talk about this topic. Are you leaving now? Qin Weibai tidied up her messy long hair, shook her head and said, I still have to see two people. Lin Fengting took a deep look at her, nodded and said, take care. He passed by Qin Weibai and walked out. The scenery in Lin and was charming, especially the West Lake, which was the most memorable. With the establishment of the Supervisory Council, the West Lake scenic spots had recently been guarded by a lot of armed troops. Inevitably, the number of tourists had decreased a lot. The sparsely populated West Lake was a holy land for Lin Fengting, who was unrestrained in his bones. Qin Weibai seemed to have calmed down. She went back to the bedroom and changed her clothes. She was dressed simply in a white shirt and black straight pants. She washed her face in the bathroom. Qin Weibai, who had been empty and desperate and a little weak, suddenly became dreamy and cold again. She called Flaming Fire and asked them to prepare a car, book a plane ticket and get ready to leave. Saint was still recovering in the small villa at the end of the villa area. Qin Weibai did not intend to see him again. From the very beginning, it was a deal between her and Saint. For her, the meeting in the villa a few days ago should be the last meeting in her life. Saint seemed to be aware of this, so he took off his cloak that day. She went downstairs and walked out of the villa. Before leaving Zhongzhou State, she still had to see two people. It didn't matter in which order as long as she saw them. The lawn in front of the villa was green and soft. Qin Weibai stood on the grass and turned around gently. With her back to the West Lake, she stared at the villa that brought her too much happiness and peace of mind. The location of the villa was excellent, but because of the age it was actually a little old. However, it seemed to be contaminated with too much of Li Tianlan's aura, so every brick and tile was impeccable. Impeccable, the most perfect. There was a kind of faint but full of joy, anger, sorrow and joy, full of lingering love, full of deep love and no regrets. This atmosphere was neither heaven nor hell. It was the human world in the vast secular world. But it was no longer the human world that belonged to her. Why should she miss it? Qin Weibai pressed her red lips tightly. She looked at the villa in front of her again and simply turned around. A flash of red appeared in her line of sight. That red dress was like a swaying flame under the sun. The red was passionate, the red was charming, and the red was dazzling. So gorgeous. But so cold. The red dress, with the hem of the dress fluttering in the wind, walked lightly to Qin Weibai. Chapter 343. Qin Weibai looked at Red Dress who walked up to her. The red dress was bright and eye-catching, making people ignore the breeze, the sun, the lake and the green trees. The red dress fluttered and became the most vivid color in front of Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai instinctively adjusted her body, took a step back and made a subtle but clear defensive posture. Her expression was serious. But her eyes, which had just woken up, became dazed again, and there was no focus in them. It seemed to be the same morning. It seemed to be the same sunshine. It seemed to be the same breeze. It seemed to be the same red dress. How familiar this scene was. It was like a sharp knife, piercing directly into her broken heart without any leeway, making her numb and hollow soul experience the deep pain again. The story seemed to have just begun. But Qin Weibai felt that she was standing in the end. She was a little panicked. So she took another step back and looked around in a panic. The villa area was quiet under the sun. The breeze was extremely gentle and the treetops were swaying in the wind. The sun shone on the west lake with charming waves. There was no sky close at hand, and it was impossible to see the whole city from above. There was no blood on the ground and the grass was green and soft, peaceful. Qin Weibai took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. I cried. I'm fine now, she said. Red Dress looked at Qin Weibai quietly. Her eyes were as clear as water, with a kind of innocence that had never been polluted by any filth. She was wearing a bright red tunic dress and a pair of pure white sneakers. Her fair and straight calves were exposed. Her hair fluttered in the breeze. She was pure and enchanting, like a piece of colorful crystal. She was crystal clear and beautiful, yet so gorgeous. Qin Weibai's eyes stayed on her shoes for a long time. Red Dress seemed to take a small step back in a hurry and whispered, I'm not used to wearing high-heeled shoes. That's good. Qin Weibai smiled. Tianlan just left to find your brother-in-law. Did you come to Lin by yourself? I came with my sister. Dongqing Rushi, dressed in red, said honestly. Lin was not far from Huading. Since Zhou Yuanshan was in charge of the Jianghu provincial government, it was much more convenient for Dongqing Qiuqi and Zhou Yuanshan to get together. After Zhou Yuanshan got familiar with the environment in a few days, Dongqing Qiuqi naturally came to see her husband. It was just a 2 to 3 hour drive. Dongqing Rushi, who lived with her sister, naturally came to see her fiancé. I'm also your sister. Qin Weibai smiled softly and meaningfully. Her red and swollen eyes were still resplendent, but her expression was extremely gentle. It was a very kind gaze, filled with intimacy, appreciation, and a trace of imperceptible but real guilt. Dongqing Rushi blushed, blinked her eyes and subconsciously glanced at her wrist. Both of them wore the same exquisite watches on their wrists. She had nothing to do with Qin Weibai. But from Li Tianlan's point of view, Li Tianlan was their man, and they were naturally sisters. Dongqing Rushi gently bit her lower lip, and her bright little face was a little gloomy. No matter how pure her temperament was, she was still a woman. Sharing a man with another woman, and she had to call this woman sister. Dongqing Rushi couldn't describe the feeling in her heart, but she just felt a little wronged. Do you feel very wronged? Qin Weibai asked softly. No. Dongqing Rushi shook her head subconsciously, but she was not good at hiding her emotions. She gently pursed her small mouth, and it seemed that she didn't mean what she said. It's normal to feel wronged. Qin Weibai touched Dongqing Rushi's hair, and her voice became softer. She was 1.76 meters tall barefoot, and she was a little taller than Dongqing Rushi. With a pair of high heels, her movement was very natural. Even if I were you, I would also feel wronged. At least for now, it seems that you are indeed more suitable for Tianlan than me. If I were you, maybe I would have already made a scene. Dongqing Rushi lowered her head and looked at her toes. She whispered, I don't dare. If I make a scene, Tianlan will definitely not want me. If Tianlan doesn't want me, my family will not want me either. Her words were very soft and tender. Qin Weibai, who knew something about the past, felt sad in her heart. How could they bear to do that? Qin Weibai smiled and took Dongqing Rushi's hand. You are the most suitable girl for Tianlan, no one else. Tianlan will definitely not abandon you. Really? Dongqing Rushi raised her head and looked at Qin Weibai with clear eyes. She was a little happy. Of course it's true. Qin Weibai nodded. The kindness in her eyes was not hidden, but there was still a trace of pity and sadness. If she didn't exist. Who? Dongqing Rushi asked subconsciously. She asked it very naturally, but when she said the single syllable, there was a stiffness that she didn't even notice. The breeze was still soft. Dongqing Rushi, whose hand was held by Qin Weibai, gradually changed. The clarity in her eyes gradually changed, and a strange look became stronger and stronger. Qin Weibai let go of Dongqing Rushi's hand in silence. The kindness in her eyes gradually disappeared, and she became cold. Of course it's another you. I don't think there's anything wrong with my existence. The clarity in Dongqing Rushi's eyes disappeared completely, and she became extremely cold and vigilant almost instantly. Qin Weibai looked indifferently at Dongqing Yueshan, who had quietly replaced Dongqing Rushi's personality. There was a trace of disgust in her eyes that she couldn't hide. It was disgust, not hatred. You should disappear, she said coldly. If you don't show up, the Dongqing clan will be much more at ease. Ridiculous. Dongqing Yueshan sneered. My existence is not a secret in the Dongqing clan. My sister, my parents, my grandfather, and my godfather all know about it. They all love me very much. What qualifications do you have to stand in the Dongqing clan's position to judge me? You are neither human nor ghost. Qin Weibai's voice was as cold as the chilly wind blowing out of the polar glacier, without any temperature. Her smile was as cold as a knife and sharp. You have the face to say that they love you very much? Don't you feel ashamed? Her words were extremely harsh. But Dongqing Yueshan wasn't angry. She just frowned and wondered, why should I feel ashamed? This rhetorical question was natural. Qin Weibai was stunned on the spot. She was silent for a long time, then sighed softly and said self-mockingly, you really have nothing to feel ashamed of now. Dongqing Yueshan became more and more inexplicable. She looked at Qin Weibai with undisguised defensiveness in her eyes. Just like Qin Weibai didn't like her. She didn't like Qin Weibai either. This woman was recognized as a goddess in the dark world. She was superior, perfect, otherworldly, and extremely beautiful. But when Dongqing Rushi saw her for the first time in Heaven Capital, she didn't like her. She always felt that this woman was too demonic. Under the sacred all was demonic aura. Dongqing Yueshan didn't want to admit that this dislike was fear, but she instinctively didn't want to see Qin Weibai. But what Qin Weibai said to Dongqing Rushi was too obvious. If she didn't show up, she really wasn't sure what Qin Weibai would say. So now it was not so much that Dongqing Yueshan took the initiative to show up, but that Qin Weibai took the initiative to lead her out. What do you want? Dongqing Yueshan asked cautiously. Do you remember our meeting in Heaven Capital? Qin Weibai said calmly, I asked you a question at that time. In the past 100 years in Jianghu state, which family is the saddest and most pitiful? Dongqing Yueshan stared at Qin Weibai and said nothing. Qin Weibai did ask this question. But Qin Weibai also gave the answer at that time. She didn't say the Li family but the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Yueshan didn't agree with this view. Not the Li family. And not the Dongqing clan. She looked at Qin Weibai and said firmly, word by word. I really don't know where your confidence comes from. Qin Weibai sneered and said, if some people are trustworthy, how can we have all this today? From your point of view, if you trust the wrong person, you are doomed to a tragedy. I'm right. Dongqing Yueshan's tone was firm and stubborn. Qin Weibai took a deep look at her. You can believe in your own judgment, provided that you are mentally prepared to pay the price. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed and she said nothing. Tell me, if you fall in love with a man you have to kill, what will happen? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. She asked suddenly. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed dramatically. I don't know what you are talking about. She forced herself to be calm. Qin Weibai looked at Dongqing Yueshan quietly, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were in a trance and her thoughts completely drifted elsewhere. They are all pitiful people, she said softly, and her sharp eyes softened. Have you ever imagined yourself as a bird? A bird with wings that can fly freely, flying higher than an eagle? Qin Weibai asked softly. Dongqing Yueshan only thought that she was crazy. She shook her head and said, no. I have imagined it, but I can't. Qin Weibai said softly, but there is a woman who has always thought so. She used to be a genius of an era, but in the end she cooperated with others and killed her beloved man. Do you want to know what happened to her in the end? What happened? Dongqing Yueshan asked subconsciously. She was crazy. Qin Weibai laughed and said, she was really crazy. Back then she thought that she was a bird that could fly freely in front of me. So she laughed and jumped from the highest place in Huading. She fell to pieces and her family fell into dire straits because of that. The important members of her family were either sentenced to death or sent to prison. None of them had a good ending. Qin Weibai said softly, as if she remembered that summer again. That summer in Huading, that woman was also wearing a scarlet dress and a pair of red high heels. In the bright and illusory sunshine, she smiled foolishly and imagined that she had become a bird, opened the wings she thought she had, and jumped from the highest place in Huading. She was a crazy red dress. She was a bird with broken wings. Her figure passed through the white clouds and fell from the sky with the fierce wind, and finally dyed a large area of green grass red. After the sunshine in Huading that day, there was a heavy rain. The heavy rain passed through the quiet years in the depths of memory, gradually turning red and sticky, like the last messy loneliness of a bloody storm. All the grudges and grievances had their final ending in that rain of blood. Qin Weibai smiled, looked at the expressionless Dongqing Yuetian in front of her, and said softly, "Coincidentally, that completely crazy woman has a name similar to yours." Chapter 344. Li Honghe was making tea. The two villas under Qin Weibai's name were next to each other. Through the white railing, Qin Weibai clearly saw the old man making tea in the courtyard of another villa. The wind was gentle and the sun was shining. The old man's movements were unhurried and leisurely. Seeing Qin Weibai coming over, Li Honghe looked up with a smile and said, "Sit down. You're in a good mood." Qin Weibai sat down and said in a flat tone. She didn't call Senior Li, who seemed to be very respectful. In the absence of others, Qin Weibai didn't bother to disguise her emotions. "I'm old. I told you last time we met that I have nothing to think about in this life. My only obsession is to see Tianlan bring the Li family back to its original height." Li Honghe smiled and poured a cup of tea for Qin Weibai. West Lake Longjing was world famous, but the old man made black tea from Jiangnan. The tea was mellow and had a long aftertaste. He put the tea in front of Qin Weibai, narrowed his eyes and continued, "But now it seems that you still don't believe me. Should I believe you?" Qin Weibai asked. This was not the first time they met. More than 4 years ago, when Li Tianlan repracticed martial arts for the first time in the desert prison, Qin Weibai and Li Honghe met for the first time. Qin Weibai had never concealed her doubts about Li Honghe, but she got all of Li Honghe's trust. "Whether you believe it or not, I mean it." Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai calmly. Qin Weibai looked down at the cup of black tea handed over by the old man. She gently touched the edge of the cup with her fingers. After a long time she suddenly asked, "Is there enough manpower in the Li family?" "The Overwatch Council has enough manpower." Li Honghe said calmly, "It's not a powerful agency in the southeast. It doesn't make sense to put too many people here." Qin Weibai looked up at Li Honghe as if she wanted to see through his heart. On the surface, the Southeast Supervisory Council was indeed meaningless. Most of the Southeast was the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. A few areas like Huading were also a mix of crooks and honest people. Those who dared to establish themselves there all had quite a strong background. The power and function of the special warfare system were originally very vague. The Supervisory Council had the function of supervision. But at present, unless an institution blatantly committed treason, the Supervisory Council had no business at all. But it was an organization that could be at the same level as the Special Warfare Department. Li Honghe's position was more meaningful to provide the Li family with a place to survive. The Li family, which had only a dozen people left, was all stuffed into the Overwatch Council. At least it was equal to having a veritable official identity. It was also equal to Zhongzhou State's recognition of the Li family's status again after many years of treason. With this identity, no matter how much the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City hated the Li family, they could only hold it in. If they took the risk to take action, once clues were exposed and used by people with ulterior motives, it might form another case of treason, and the evidence would be more conclusive than the case of treason many years ago. Therefore, in a short time, in the absence of absolute certainty and entanglement of great interests, the Li family would be extremely safe in Lin and with the brand of the Overwatch Council. But it was only limited to safety. It was also very difficult to expand. And this was under the situation that the Li family got the survival soil after Sai City gave up a murderous weapon in 2 provinces in the northeast. Wu Jingmin was transferred from Jianghu. But all this was only on the surface. No matter how down and out the Li family was, Li Honghe was still there. Although Wu Jingmin was transferred, he went further into the decision-making committee and became the lowest-ranking deputy prime minister in the cabinet. Zhang Qi, the minister of special warfare in the southeast, also hid very well. This was only known by Qin Weibai. God knew how many cards Li Honghe had hidden in his hands. This unfathomable old man, guarding in the southeast, held an agency that seemed to have no real power, but had too many chess pieces that could be used in the dark. He said he had no thoughts. Who dared to believe it? At least Qin Weibai did not dare to believe it. Everything in the future depends on Tianlan. Li Honghe whispered, the road has been paved. Although this starting point is not perfect, it is much better than expected. At least as long as I am alive he will not have any worries. But the situation is not good. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. In all fairness, today's Li family was already good. At least it had become Li Tianlan's help. Jianghu, which was likely to become the foundation of the Li family in the future, and Zhongzhou State's deputy prime minister, who was old but strong, was not weak. In any group, it would be an important or even a core component. But the key was that the Li family was not in any group, and the Li family's opponent was not an individual, but a group. It was a behemoth like the Southeast Group and the Special Warfare Group. In comparison, the help around Li Tianlan suddenly seemed extremely loose. One was the declining Li family, and the other was Sai City, which had just risen for a few decades but lost its murderous weapon. As for the giant group, Li Tianlan didn't get the support of the giant group so much as the support of the three pillars of rich and powerful families: Dongqing City, the Bai family, and the Zhou family. The combined forces were indeed powerful, but it was still a different concept from the support of the giant group. It was really not good. Li Honghe nodded. So if you have extra men, you don't have to monitor me. It's better to put them in more useful places. Qin Weibai's slender and delicate fingers gently tapped on the edge of the cup. The sound of fingernails gently touching the teacup was extremely empty, calm, but unusually distant. Qin Weibai's voice sounded in the tapping. How much can you grasp about the purgatory of heaven capital? The Li family had been away from the dark world for many years. But this problem could still become the most sensitive one in the dark world. Li Honghe. Grasping the purgatory of heaven capital. Li Honghe did not seem surprised by this question. He was silent for a while and then said indifferently, which aspect do you mean? There were only two main reasons why the purgatory of heaven capital could become the top superpower in the dark world in just 3 years, and its momentum surpassed that of the Samsara Palace. First, it was a decisive expert who could almost override the entire dark world. It was deity who had fought with Wang Tianzong more than once without suffering much loss. Second, it was the pillar experts and elite troops of the purgatory of heaven capital. Sun Luo, life-prolonging, immortality. When the three palaces of the purgatory of heaven capital were famous in the dark world, people found that the experts of the purgatory of heaven capital were far more than Daybreak, Dawn, and Phoenix. There were also a large number of silent experts and real battle-hardened elites. Top experts, steady pillars, and battle-hardened elites formed the most stable structure of the purgatory of heaven capital. They had no shortcomings because they were backed by East Island, so they could become a real superpower in the shortest time. All aspects. Qin Weibai said indifferently. This time, Li Honghe was silent for a longer time, and then he said slowly, I don't know. Qin Weibai could hear that it was the truth. But because it was the truth, she felt a little sharp and angry. You don't know? She raised her eyebrows. Don't worry. Li Honghe smiled. Everyone has witnessed Tianlan's performance over the years. The Li family all approves of him. But not everyone approves of him. Qin Weibai's tone was cold. It's enough that most people approve of him. Li Honghe's tone was indifferent. As long as he's strong enough, he can get everything. I've prepared everything that needs to be prepared. You've prepared what I'm not prepared for. He looked at Qin Weibai with undisguised appreciation in his eyes. I didn't expect that the silence of the master of Samsara Palace would have such a big impact in the final battle of Heaven Capital 3 years ago. After the border war, Tiannan appeared, and the purgatory of Heaven Capital entered Tiannan. Is it your doing? Is this our tacit understanding? I'm just doing what I should do. Qin Weibai's voice was indifferent. Tianlan will become stronger, the strongest. I've never doubted that. But he needs time to grow. Li Honghe said in a low voice. His tone was very heavy. Because everyone knew what Li Tianlan would be like when he grew up. He knew. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City would also know. The Li family just wanted a soil for survival, and it directly shook the situation in the northeast and southeast of Zhongzhou State. Even with the support of the giant group, it still paid a high price. This was just a soil for survival. So what kind of price did the Li family have to pay to make Li Tianlan grow up? I'll give him time. Qin Weibai said softly, but after he gets time, what else will he get? The sound of fingers tapping on the edge of the cup was still ringing. Calm and collected. The subtle sound seemed to synchronize with the breeze, becoming softer and more soothing. A butterfly flew over the marble coffee table. The butterfly's wings fluttered and finally landed beside the teapot. He can get everything as long as he has time. Li Honghe took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Everything? Qin Weibai laughed. I can't believe you, she said, and even if he gets it, there are two kinds. One is temporary possession, and the other is real possession. Tianlan can get everything, but your existence may take everything away. I have a hunch that you may live longer than everyone thinks. Wang Qianzong slashed you with his sword and made you fall into the invincible realm. It may be for a reason. Senior Li, you just said that most people in the Li family will recognize Tianlan. Her voice paused. The butterfly in front of the table flew up, but it danced in the sight of the two. Qin Weibai's voice was ethereal, vaguely seeming to synchronize with heaven and earth. It sounded with the vibration of the butterfly's wings, occupying all of people's consciousness. So, do you recognize Tianlan? The butterfly danced softly. The wind seemed to be getting stronger. The sky was rising and the temperature was rising. The sunlight gradually faded, and the air became dark. The coffee table in front of the two remained unchanged, but the grass around them began to wriggle wildly. The grass was rising wildly and completely out of control. Wildflowers appeared in the grass and bloomed rapidly. One by one, the trees grew bigger and taller in the grass at a speed visible to the naked eye. The air became sultry and thick. The villa disappeared. A dense primitive forest suddenly appeared around the two of them. The sunlight disappeared completely. In the darkness, the table and chairs in front of the two seemed to disappear, and the marble table turned into a stone tablet. Two bright red characters were carved on the stone tablet. Jianghu State. The butterfly was dancing. The wind was getting stronger. The thick and sultry air was flowing in the wind. The sultry air gradually became cool, and then it turned into bitter cold. It began to snow high up in the sky. The snow covered the treetops and fell to the ground. Of course I recognized Tianlan. Li Honghe's voice became a little slow, but it was still clear. Really? Qin Weibai's voice was like the sound of nature, filling every corner of the forest, grand and clear, like the voice of a fairy. Yes. Li Honghe's voice became more and more slow. He didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with the forest that shouldn't have appeared. It was still snowing in the sky. The snow was getting heavier and heavier, and the snow kept rising, burying the boundary monument of Jianghu State for a moment. Countless trees gathered together, rising and rising again. The landscape was undergoing earth-shaking changes. The snowflakes were getting bigger and bigger. Qin Weibai also didn't think there was anything wrong with the snow that shouldn't have appeared. Her voice still rang through the whole world unhurriedly. If Li Guangde didn't die between him and Tianlan, what would you choose? Li Honghe's voice sounded a little dull, but it was extremely true and frank. I don't know. What about you? He suddenly countered with a question. The snowflakes all over the sky fell down like crazy. Countless trees were still rising, still gathering. The forest had disappeared. So the rising and gathering trees turned into mountains. The mountain was covered with snow, covering the entire mountain and plains. Of course I choose Tianlan. Qin Weibai's voice was gentle and sentimental, almost like a whisper. Really? Li Honghe's dull voice gradually became smooth. Why are you so good to him? He looked at Qin Weibai. Who the hell are you? I am, boom. Qin Weibai seemed to have said the answer, but Li Honghe couldn't hear it clearly. The whole world completely collapsed in an instant. The falling snow, the collapsed snow-capped mountains, and the messy sky completely disappeared in an instant. Li Honghe gave a muffled groan. The world returned to its original state. There was still a tea table in front of them. It was still windy and sunny, and the fragrance of tea was spreading. The butterfly was still there. But it became two. One stopped in front of Qin Weibai. The other fell on Li Honghe's hand. Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai. His eyes were a little strange. The expression on Qin Weibai's perfect face changed, and she stared at the butterfly in Li Honghe's hand. You want to hypnotize me? Qin Weibai's voice was extremely cold. You want to hypnotize me? Li Honghe said softly. Qin Weibai was silent. In the spiritual field, both of them were masters. She understood what was going on in an instant. At the beginning, the primeval forest and the boundary marker of Jianghu State were all normal. Because that was the world deep in Li Honghe's heart. It was the border. But there shouldn't be snow at the border. The moment the snow appeared was the beginning of Li Honghe's counterattack. The vast snow and the snow-capped mountains were Qin Weibai's inner world. The only world. Qin Weibai recognized Li Honghe's inner world. That was the real border of Jianghu state. Li Honghe also recognized Qin Weibai's inner world. That was the real Kunlun of Jianghu state. The snow and the mountain could almost be regarded as the hub of the special warfare system of Jianghu state. That was the Qingyun Snow Peak of Kunlun. Under the Qingyun Snow Peak. It was Kunlun city of Jianghu state. The two worlds changed so naturally that Qin Weibai, who wanted to hypnotize Li Honghe, didn't notice it. Instead of getting the truth she wanted, she almost fell into Li Honghe's trap. The confrontation in the spiritual field was even more thrilling than the fight between martial arts, because it was almost an interrogation of the soul. Li Honghe fell from the invincible realm, and his willpower was unstable. Qin Weibai was also in a trance in the face of the parting that would never be together again. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and calmed down again. She might have said something just now, but she believed that Li Honghe couldn't hear it. I didn't expect you to have such a strong sense of self-protection. Li Honghe smiled and said, similarly, I didn't expect you to know this method of hypnosis. He looked at Qin Weibai and said, the field of hypnosis is broad and profound. Different techniques have different effects. This technique is improved by me, and it can even be said to be my own creation. Li Honghe touched the butterfly on his hand and said, I can be sure that there is only one person who knows this technique except me, but that person is not you. His smile was a little complicated and confused. So can you tell me who taught you this technique? Qin Weibai glanced at Li Honghe coldly and said nothing. Hey, Sister Grandpa Li, are you drinking tea here? It's windy. A voice suddenly sounded. Lin Yuxian appeared in front of the two with a bright smile. What are you talking about? Nothing. Li Honghe smiled and said, watching the butterfly. He raised his hand. The butterfly flew up and flew past Lin Yuxian's eyes. What butterfly? Where is it? Lin Yuxian looked confused. Let's go. Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. She took a deep look at Li Honghe and said calmly, I don't know if I should believe you or not. My distrust of you all comes from that cemetery. I know what you have done. Lin Yuxian was there, so what she said was not completely clear. Li Honghe condensed the death energy formed by nearly 1,000 dead people of the Li family into a huge destiny, which almost doomed Li Tianlan's destiny of death. How could Qin Weibai believe Li Honghe? A light flashed in Li Honghe's eyes and he smiled bitterly. I understand. But I have no choice. If I had a choice I wouldn't do that. He sighed softly, looked at Qin Weibai and said softly but sincerely, I also know what you and Wu Wei have done. Thank you. I'm leaving. Qin Weibai shook her head. Li Honghe stood up behind her and bowed deeply to the young woman who was nominally his granddaughter-in-law. Thank you. Lin Yuxian was startled. Qin Weibai did not look back. Li Honghe looked at her back with a calm expression. He knew what Qin Weibai had done, so he naturally knew what kind of consequences she had to bear. This woman, who had only a vast expanse of snow in her heart, was going to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan thought that it was just a farewell. But Li Honghe knew it clearly. There would be no future for her to leave this time. No matter what happened in the future, her perfect figure would no longer be seen in the final sky of Li Tianlan and the Li family. Qin Weibai gently turned around and walked out of the villa. The brilliance of the whole early summer seemed to wither like winter as she turned around. Chapter 345. It was Zhou Yuanshan who asked Li Tianlan to meet, but the meeting place was the first building of the Jianghu Council compound. This was Wu Jingmin's residence. Wu Jingmin's entry into the cabinet was a foregone conclusion. The Ministry of Organizing Work of Jianghu State had issued a document a few days ago, and the whole of Jianghu was shaken violently. Recently, the council compound of Jianghu was extremely lively. Various departments at the provincial level and the prefecture level leaders below them came in an endless stream. Wu Jingmin had been running Jianghu for more than 20 years, and he had been the top leader for nearly 20 years. His deep foundation was completely revealed when he was about to leave office. Every car going in and out of the council compound was enough to show the old man's almost superb control of Jianghu. The southeast of Jianghu State was very lively this year. The most lively place was Jianghu. Lively but not chaotic. Wu Jingmin's departure from Jianghu would naturally have a huge impact, but his departure was not unacceptable. He entered the decision-making committee and was the real deputy prime minister of Jianghu State, not a nominal title. In the cabinet, he was in charge of business, finance, market economy, quality inspection, customs, tourism and other work of Jianghu state. Although he ranked last, the real power in his hands was not fake. This was undoubtedly the result of the secret support of the giant group in Lihongha. At the same time, it was announced to the whole of Jianghu that Wu Jingmin did not lose power after leaving Jianghu. Such a move would not completely stabilize people's hearts, but at least it would not make the whole officialdom of Jianghu panic. This was the first step to stabilize Jianghu, and it was a crucial step. Only when Wu Jingmin was still in power could all the subsequent actions of the Li family be meaningful. It was just after 9 o'clock in the morning when Li Tianlan arrived at the council compound on Fu Road, Lin and Province. Wu Jingmin's secretary stood at the door to greet him. The secretary had the same surname as Li Tianlan, and his first name was Tong. He was ordinary, introverted and reserved. He reached out to stop Li Tianlan's car, opened the door of the passenger seat and sat down. He said with a smile, "Your Highness, I'm Li Tong. The secretary and the governor are walking in the yard and they asked me to pick you up." Li Tianlan nodded with a smile, his eyes peaceful. As the secretary of the top leader of Jianghu, Li Tong's information was naturally among them. However, compared with the 13 directors of Jianghu, Li Tong's information was a lot more vague. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City joined hands to attack Lihongha. After that, a series of rapid and hasty changes occurred. No one else was prepared, not even the Li family itself. It was completely unrealistic for Li Tianlan to integrate into the high-level circle of Jianghu in just a few days. Today he bit the bullet and came here, which seemed to be pushing a duck to the perch. Under the circumstances that he had not even met Wu Jingmin, it was naturally difficult for him to understand what kind of person Li Tong was. The black Audi slowly drove to the gate of the councilor's compound. At the same time, an Audi with a Yong City license plate slowly drove out. The two cars brushed past each other. Li Tianlan glanced at it. It was the number 1 bus from Yong City. It's Secretary Ji's car. Li Tong reminded softly. He looked out the window at the departing Audi with undisguised envy in his eyes. Secretary Ji Ankang of Yong City. Li Tianlan said with a smile. In the information he studied, the Deputy Secretary of Jianghu, Ji Ankang of Yong City, could be said to be the most important, so he could understand the envy in Li Tong's eyes. Because Ji Ankang could be regarded as Li Tong's predecessor and the first secretary of Wu Jingmin, he could be said to be the most trusted confidant. Wu Jingmin strongly recommended Ji Ankang to the high-level leaders to be the top leader of Yong City. At the same time, in order to check and balance Wang Jingxin of Lin and, he pushed him to the position of deputy secretary. In today's Jianghu, Ji Ankang seemed to be a vassal, but in fact he was the real third leader of the whole Jianghu. The information given by Qin Weibai and Li Honghe clearly pointed out that when Wu Jingmin left Jianghu, as long as Ji Ankang was kept, Zhou Yuanshan was almost invincible in the competition with Wang Jingxin. Li Tianlan drove thoughtfully. The car passed by the first building of the director's compound and came to the chessboard mountain in the director's compound. The trees on the chessboard mountain were green, but they did not give people a sense of lush vitality. Instead, they looked a little desolate in the green. There was a chessboard temple on the chessboard. Li Tianlan drove west along the mountain road and finally saw 2 men standing side by side in front of an old mountain wall. Wu Jingmin, whose hair was a little gray and had not had time to dye it black, was saying something. Zhou Yuanshan, the new governor who came to Jianghu from Zhongyuan, stood in front of Wu Jingmin high-spirited and in high spirits. The mountain wall behind them was engraved with a whole volume of Amitabha Sutra, and the handwriting was ancient and clear. Li Tianlan looked at this picture quietly. Even though he was a very slow guy in all aspects, when he looked at the 2 men in his sight at this time, he could clearly feel the extremely heavy and solemn atmosphere full of power. He took a deep breath, opened the door, got out of the car and walked over. Zhou Yuanshan saw Li Tianlan and waved his hand with a smile. This was the second time they met. But different from the approachable brother-in-law in the director's compound of Huading for the first time, Zhou Yuanshan now was steady and strong, and his every move was dignified. The only thing that remained unchanged was that his eyes were still kind when looking at Li Tianlan. He shook hands with Li Tianlan, and then introduced with a chuckle, "Tianlan, this is Secretary Wu." Li Tianlan did not reach out to Wu Jingmin. He came to him, bent down very seriously and bowed to call him Grandpa Wu. Wu Jingmin was an old friend of Li Honghe. In any case, he deserved to be called Grandpa Wu. This was the talent that Li Honghe valued the most in those days, and his performance did not let anyone down. In the more than 20 years after the collapse of the Li family, facing the covetous eyes of the Wang family of Beihai and the open and covert attacks of other groups, he always stayed in Jianghu and guarded the last and most important foundation for the Li family. Not only did he stand firm, but he was even able to promote his first secretary to the position of the third leader. Every storm in Jianghu over the past 20 years could fully show Wu Jingmin's unfathomable political wisdom. If the Li family was still in its peak state with Wu Jingmin's ability, how could he stay in Jianghu? It was even possible for him to become the cabinet. Wisdom means courage and loyalty. Wu Jingmin could hardly find any flaws. This was a real strong man. He waited for the current situation with more than 20 years of silence and persistence, and finally won everyone's respect. Such silence was even more powerful than the desperate roars of too many people. Why are you so polite? Wu Jingmin smiled and helped Li Tianlan. His eyes were a little emotional. Looking at Li Tianlan's young face, he whispered, "Today's situation is not easy, and it will depend on you in the future. Don't worry, Grandpa Wu." Li Tianlan's voice was very light, but there was no guilt in it, only firmness. In this situation, Jianghu can only be temporarily handed over to Yuanshan. Wu Jingmin sighed and said, "Today I called you here for no other reason. I just want to express an attitude to the outside world. Even if I leave Jianghu, the Li family has a successor, and there is a good enough team for the giant group to build their next generation with you as the core. Only in this way can these people in Jianghu continue to maintain confidence and hope. If you have nothing to do in the afternoon, you and Yuanshan can accompany me for a walk. I guess I have to see a lot of people." Okay. Li Tianlan nodded, as calm as water. "Ankang has just been here. He has made it clear that he will support Yuanshan's work. If I leave Jianghu, as long as Ankang is still there won't be a big problem within 3 years. Tianlan, time is very tight. The next 3 years are very important for you, for me, for Yuanshan, and for the entire Li family. And all of this depends on your performance in the next 3 years." Wu Jingmin looked at Li Tianlan with gentle eyes. "Are you confident?" Li Tianlan nodded in silence. He understood what Wu Jingmin meant. 3 years later, there would be a major change of government in Zhongzhou state once in a decade. At that time, if there was no accident, Wu Jingmin would definitely retire. After all, he was too old. Once Wu Jingmin retired, the situation in Jianghu would be unpredictable. At that time, whether Governor Zhou Yuanshan of Jianghu could take the position or not would be the key. If Zhou Yuanshan could not stay in Jianghu, the Li family was bound to be in turmoil again. Even if Zhou Yuanshan could get a position not inferior to that in Jianghu, the Wang family of Beihai that regained control of Jianghu would not let the Li family have a good life. If Zhou Yuanshan was forced to leave, it would even affect the layout of the giant group. This was a real move in one hair and the whole body would be affected. It was difficult for the Li family to make any real big moves in Jianghu within 3 years. Therefore, everything was on Li Tianlan. 3 years later, it was the time to really test the Li family's survival. What Li Tianlan could do could even directly determine the final result of the Li family. And what he had to do was not only to ensure that his martial arts advanced by leaps and bounds, but also to make his power expand rapidly. At least, he had to ensure that Zhou Yuanshan could take the position in Jianghu. This was the bottom line and the biggest goal. "Don't worry, Grandpa Wu." Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His tone was not excited. "Next, everything depends on me." Wu Jingmin nodded and said meaningfully, "When a pawn crosses the river, there is no way back. It can only move forward. Everyone is a pawn." Zhou Yuanshan whispered. The general trend was like a chessboard. Every time there was a turbulence on the chessboard, there were dense black and white interlacing, just like Go. But when it came to the Li family, the general trend of the Li family was also a chessboard. But because they had too few pawns, each pawn must have a more distinct role. It was like chess. Wu Jingmin crossed the river from Jianghu to Yuzhou. Zhou Yuanshan crossed the river from Zhongyuan to Jianghu. Li Tianlan also crossed the river from Jianghu. They were all pawns crossing the river. There was no retreat. On the chessboard mountain, in front of the chessboard temple, the three of them stood quietly like 3 pawns on the chessboard who crossed the river first. Chapter 346. In the afternoon and night, Wu Jingmin took Li Tianlan to meet a lot of people. Jianghu was very big, but in the past many years the power structure was extremely simple, especially in the years when the Li family was destroyed. No matter how Wu Jingmin insisted, at least in the overall situation he was the backbone of the Southeast Group. After the end of the Yuzhou conference, Wu Jingmin, who had entered the cabinet, officially left the Southeast Group and became Li Honghe's subordinate again. Naturally, he was unwilling to let go of the team he had cultivated in Jianghu for many years. He must do his best to leave these team members to the Li family. Wu Jingmin was upright and had sharp eyes. In more than 20 years, the team he had built in Jianghu was absolutely full of talents. In his own words, few people would care about an old guy like him who was too old to be active for a long time. But these people who had been promoted by him over the years were the real wealth. Because of this, today's meeting happened. Wu Jingmin, who was deeply rooted in Jianghu, Zhou Yuanshan, who was the first among the young generation of the giant group to reach a high position, and Li Tianlan, the heir of the Li family. The three of them stood together. The relationship between them was subtle and meaningful. The powerful figures of Jianghu who saw the three of them also had mixed feelings. Most of the day had passed. Li Tianlan didn't know how many people he had met, but he clearly remembered their attitudes. Among the 13 directors of Jianghu, except for Zhou Yuanshan himself, Wang Jingxin, and Su Xinghe who had not yet arrived in Jianghu, 6 directors clearly expressed their support for Zhou Yuanshan, and 2 expressed a certain degree of support. In addition, the attitude of the main people in charge of the cities under Jianghu was also relatively optimistic. It might take time to test the specific situation, but at least for now, no one clearly opposed Zhou Yuanshan taking over the team left by Wu Jingmin. Today's trip was already worthwhile for him to get this result. When Wu Jingmin left and Su Xinghe took office, the real struggle between the dragon and the tiger had just begun. Li Tianlan had dinner in the number 2 building of the director's compound, and then drove back to the villa area by West Lake. The lights were still on in Qin Weibai's 2 villas, but Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai had left. In the afternoon, when Wu Jingmin took him to visit a senior deputy governor of Jianghu, Qin Weibai sent him a text message. It was a simple message with only 3 words. "I'm leaving." Li Tianlan didn't reply at that time. At this time he took out his mobile phone and glanced at it again. He suddenly felt a burst of melancholy. Li Honghe was drinking tea in the living room. Lin Fengting, who had been elusive in recent days, sat in front of Li Honghe and talked about some interesting things inside the Lin clan with a smile. Li Tianlan's heart was empty, with some disappointment that he himself was not aware of. "You're back." Li Honghe glanced at him with gentle eyes. "How are you today?" "It's all right." Li Tianlan sat on the sofa and poured himself a cup of tea. After Elder Wu leaves, the situation in Jianghu will not change much. It is unlikely to get better, but it will not get worse either. It will be a fierce battle. The real winner will be outside of Jianghu in 3 years. Lin Fengting smiled and pointed out the current situation with one prick. He didn't care about the affairs of the world, but it didn't mean that he was a fool. Since he had decided to help the Li family, he must pay attention to the current situation of Zhongzhou state. Lin Fengting could see the current situation clearly. In the general election 3 years later, how strong the Li family can be will directly determine the situation in Jianghu. At present, it is the bottom line to let Zhou Yuanshan take advantage of the situation and serve as the top leader of Jianghu in 3 years. If he can't achieve this goal, the Li family will be in danger. If he is forced to leave Jianghu, after Wu Jingmin retires, all the forces he has cultivated over the years will undoubtedly fall to the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, the Li family will have nothing, and Zhou Yuanshan, who has bet on his political future, will completely lose the qualification to compete with Wang Jingxin. The giant group will also rebound because of Zhou Yuanshan's failure. The 3 pillars of the wealthy will be forced by the internal pressure of the group, and their support for the Li family will be greatly reduced. At that time, Lin Fengting didn't go on, but glanced at Li Honghe intentionally or unintentionally. Li Honghe drank tea with a calm expression. 3 years later there would be a general election. Wu Jingmin would retire, and Li Honghe's health might not be able to support it. If Zhou Yuanshan was defeated in Maiqing, the Li family would really be at the end of its road at that time. On the contrary, if Zhou Yuanshan took advantage of the situation and absorbed the team left by Wu Jingmin, no matter how bad the Li family was, with Jianghu as the foundation, it would at least have a chance to breathe. The giant group would definitely support Zhou Yuanshan. And the Southeast group would definitely oppose it. It was not difficult to guess the position of Kunlun City. The loose giant group might not be able to withstand the cooperation of the Southeast group and the Special Warfare group at that time. As for the academics, there were more important goals 3 years later, so it was bound to not give them too much support. Therefore, how far Li Tianlan could develop in these 3 years and how much support he could give Zhou Yuanshan became the key. I've met Yuanshan. With him and Jingmin, Jianghu is not a big problem. At present, this matter is temporarily over. When will you leave? Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan and asked. Now, Li Tianlan said. The storm in Lin and had settled down, and there would not be too many ups and downs in 2 or 3 years. It was meaningless for him to stay here. Okay. Li Honghe nodded, glanced at the door of the villa out of the corner of his eye, and showed a smile. A light figure walked into the hall wearing a red dress. She looked as charming as fire, but her temperament was as clear as water. She blinked at Li Tianlan and said in a clear voice, "You're back." Dongqing Rushi. Li Tianlan was a little stunned and nodded subconsciously. Why are you here? I came with my sister, Dongqing Rushi said softly. Dongqing Rushi said softly. She sat down beside Li Tianlan obediently and reached out to hold one of his hands. Li Honghe looked at this scene with warm eyes and a hearty smile. Feng Ting, don't you think these 2 children are a good match? When the final maneuver is over, I'll go to Zhongyuan in person to set their wedding date as soon as possible. Li Tianlan frowned. Li Honghe didn't seem to notice this. He looked at Dongqing Rushi with a smile and said, Girl, what do you think of your engagement with Tianlan? No. Dongqing Rushi shook her head and glanced at Li Tianlan. I'll listen to Tianlan. Li Honghe laughed and didn't hide his joy. There's no hurry about the wedding date. Let's talk about it in a few years. Li Tianlan said in a calm tone. No matter how busy you are, can you be so busy that you don't even have time to get married? There was a sharp flash in Li Honghe's eyes, and he was a little unhappy. Let's wait and see. Li Tianlan's tone was brief, suppressing the emotions in his heart. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. After a long time, she silently lowered her head, but did not let go of Li Tianlan's hand. Go pack up first and we'll go to Huading later. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and squeezed Dongqing Rushi's slightly cold palm. Dongqing Rushi nodded, stood up and went out. Packing up was an excuse in itself. Neither she nor Li Tianlan had anything to pack. Dongqing Rushi walked out of the villa and sat at the marble table in the yard, holding her cheeks in her hands in a daze. In the villa, Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan with a gloomy face. Li Tianlan drank his tea calmly. The engagement was set many years ago. It's not negotiable. After a long time, Li Honghe seemed to calm down and said word by word. I don't disagree. Li Tianlan said calmly, I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? Li Honghe's tone was a little cold. Waiting for me to die? Li Tianlan frowned and seemed to be a little annoyed. He lit a cigarette and took a big drag. Because of Qin Weibai? Li Honghe eased his tone and asked. Yes. Li Tianlan spoke bluntly. Do you know her? Or do you know who she is? Li Honghe asked in a deep voice. I don't deny that she has helped you a lot at this stage, but can you be sure that her help is a good thing for you in the end? Li Tianlan raised his head. His eyes were bright and sharp, like the bright sword light after it was unsheathed. You don't believe her? Li Tianlan asked. I do. Li Honghe said calmly, but I can't find the basis for trust. You, me, the Wang family of Beihai and the whole dark world, no one knows Samsara Palace and no one knows Qin Weibai. When Qin Weibai first appeared in Huading, the 6 investigated her through their own intelligence channels. They only knew that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest. But after all these years, the 6 tried their best. They couldn't even find any clue about her parents, not to mention that small mountain village. There was no clue at all. Do you understand? She looked at her grandson's raised eyebrows and sighed softly. I can trust Qin Weibai, but I'd rather cooperate with the Dongqing clan. After all, they know everything. And when it comes to Zhongzhou State, not to mention that Samsara Palace is not in Zhongzhou State, even if they are here, they can't help you as much as the Dongqing clan. Marrying Rushi is the best for you and the Li family. Not the best for me. Li Tianlan looked at Li Honghe with burning eyes. I really don't know her past, but I believe in her feelings for me. For me, this is the basis of all trust. Feelings? Li Honghe sneered. Do you know where these feelings come from? Li Tianlan had been stunned and couldn't say a word. What's Qin Weibai's identity? What's your identity? Now you do have feelings, but where did they come from? Is this kind of inexplicable feelings the basis of trust? Why is she so good to you? Do you understand? Li Honghe asked. He took a deep look at his grandson, whose face was changing, and said calmly, behind the inexplicable deep feelings, there must be a debt. This kind of debt may be in the past or it may be in the future. She may know that she is destined to owe you something in the future, so she makes it up to you now. I believe in such feelings. But I don't. As he spoke, the muscles at the corner of his mouth twitched, and a touch of pain and anger flashed in his eyes. Lin Fengting's mouth also twitched. I'm going to Huading. Li Tianlan stood up and walked out of the living room without looking back. Obviously, he didn't intend to say anything more on this issue. Li Honghe stood up abruptly as if he wanted Li Tianlan to stop. Lin Fengting waved his hand with a bitter smile, interrupted Li Honghe's anger and let Li Tianlan leave. Senior Li, I know what you are worried about. Lin Fengting said helplessly, but what you are worried about is unlikely. Qin Weibai does owe Tianlan, but now she is making up for it, not harming him. Not now. Li Honghe sat down. But in the final battle of Snow Country, if she doesn't die for Tianlan, what will happen in the future? Lin Fengting's eyes were complicated. He really knew what Li Honghe was worried about. But he also knew Qin Weibai. He really knew her. When in Australia, he agreed to lend the sword to Qin Weibai on the condition that he met the master of Samsara Palace. What everyone didn't know was that he did meet the master of Samsara Palace in Lin, and a few days ago. After meeting the master of Samsara Palace, he knew the origin of Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai, her debt, and the cause and effect that Lin Su said that day. Senior Li, after the final battle of Snow Country, Samsara Palace is destined to be destroyed. Lin Fengting said softly. But Samsara Palace and Qin Weibai are two different things. I can't see through her fate. Li Honghe said in a deep voice, she has the appearance of chaos. If she doesn't die in the future. Chapter 347. When he left Lin, and in addition to Dongqing Rushi who went back with him, Li Tianlan also had a very famous driver. Lin Fengting stayed in Lin, but he sent his son Lin Yuxian to Huading. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi sat in the back row. Lin Yuxian drove the car with a smile on his face, carefree and in a good mood. Did Yuxian go to Huading to see the final maneuver? Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it over, asking casually. In the end, he didn't let the heir of the Lin clan call him brother-in-law, and Lin Yuxian didn't let Li Tianlan call him brother Lin. They called each other by name. Although they were not very familiar with each other, now they were on the same side, so their relationship was relatively harmonious. Yes. Lin Yuxian took the cigarette and subconsciously glanced at Dongqing Rushi in the rearview mirror, only to find that the genius of the Dongqing clan didn't feel disgusted. Instead, she took out a lighter to help Li Tianlan light the cigarette. He smiled and said, the final maneuver of the two academies of Jianghu State is quite important every time, and this one is even more so. With you, Xingxiao Guhanshan and Jiang Shangyu, this maneuver can be said to be the most valuable one. If I don't watch such a big show, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Not only me but the people of the superpowers in the dark world will certainly collect relevant information even if they don't come. Now the Sky Academy is the focus of attention. Li Tianlan suddenly remembered the chat with Qin Weibai a few days ago. It was a chat about the Chosen One. Qin Weibai said that in this era, if someone could face Lin Fengting, deity, and the master of Samsara Palace with murderous weapons and not hurt his foundation, he would be the chosen one of this era. But this era was about to pass. Next was the era of young people. Wang Xingxiao, Gu Hanshan, and Jiang Shangyu would all be the top combat forces of Jianghu State in the future. If his foundation was not hurt in the face of their siege, would he really deserve the title of the chosen one of Jianghu State? Li Tianlan didn't consider whether he could do it or not. He was already considering what risks and benefits it would bring to him. In the final maneuver, if he really defeated everyone in this way, then no one would doubt his potential and future. But the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun cities' desire to kill him would be so strong that it couldn't be any stronger. Li Tianlan was very clear about this. He was thinking about how many people would protect him at all costs. As long as he survived, the enormous prestige he had obtained after becoming the #1 expert of the younger generation would become tangible benefits. His future development in the Southern Heaven region would also be smooth. The final maneuver, Li Tianlan murmured to himself. After the Yuzhou conference, the final maneuver would undoubtedly become a watershed for the Li family. In the long run, it was even more crucial than the Yuzhou conference. The Yuzhou conference demonstrated the Li family's past foundation, while the final maneuver meant the Li family's future potential. The time interval between the two events was so short. Li Honghe and Li Tianlan seemed to really connect the past and the future. Tianlan, are you really going to Tianan to develop after the final maneuver? Lin Yuxian casually turned off the music in the car and asked with a smile. Li Tianlan came to his senses and nodded. There is a chance there. I don't want to miss it. Do you mind if I go to Tianan with you to have a look? Lin Yuxian chuckled and took a deep drag on his cigarette. He was leisurely and carefree, and his hands were about to leave the steering wheel. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. Then he was shocked and sat up straight subconsciously. Are you going to Tianan too? He asked. What? Are you looking down on me? Lin Yuxian said with a smile. I'm not afraid of any of the few young heavenly sons in Jianghu state at present. Well, I shouldn't be a match for Shengxiao. What I lack is not sword intent, but realm. I may suffer a little in physical strength, but the difference won't be too big. If I go to Tianan, I won't be a burden and can still help. I believe you. Li Tianlan looked at Lin Yuxian strangely. Lin Yuxian's current realm was only half a step away from the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. There was no doubt about his talent and inheritance. But he couldn't figure out why Lin Yuxian went to Tianan. Does Uncle Lin know that you're going to Tianan? Li Tianlan asked straightforwardly. Yes. Lin Yuxian nodded. He doesn't support or oppose it. Everything depends on my choice. The Lin clan never enters the secular world. Li Tianlan said slowly. Lin Yuxian disapproved of this rule. It's true that we don't enter the secular world. But it's only the people of the Lin clan's headquarters who don't enter the secular world. To be honest, if you hadn't appeared, I might have been in Jianghu state now. Zhuanyuantai in Jianghu state belongs to the Li family and the Lin clan. If the Li family can't bear the foundation of our ancestors, the Lin clan won't let it go. The original plan was for me to come to Jianghu state to set up a branch of the Lin clan. Now that you've appeared, I'm much more relaxed. I've always wanted to say thank you. Now I should go to Tianan to help you with a little. And maybe I'll find the dark world wonderful in the future and directly set up a branch of the Lin clan in your territory. The future of our age is too changeable. Who can tell? Can I choose this? Li Tianlan found it incredible. Lin Yuxian was the heir of this generation of the Lin clan, and he was the only heir. If he left the headquarters, who would inherit the Lin clan in the future? I couldn't choose before. But now I can choose. Lin Yuxian paused and said calmly, in the next 20 years of the Lin clan, my father has found a helmsman who is better than me, him, and everyone else. I won't hide it from you. It's the sister I just recognized. The dark world is very chaotic now, but this 3-year war will come to an end sooner or later. If there is no accident, this storm will end in snow country. At present, the Samsara Palace is in a very bad situation. In the past 3 years, it can be said that the Samsara Palace has single-handedly provoked the scuffle in the dark world. Now all the superpowers have almost reacted, but they can't get off. They can only bite the bullet and fight on. But at the last moment, the Samsara Palace, which has attracted too much hatred, will not have a good end. Its destruction is expected. If the Samsara Palace disappears, my father plans to let my sister take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years. He looked at Li Tianlan and said meaningfully, not the headquarters of the Lin clan. It's the whole Lin clan. Li Tianlan looked stunned. The whole Lin clan. Even with his current knowledge, he didn't know what it meant. The headquarters of the Lin clan, plus the branches scattered around the world, might be a behemoth that could compete with the Wang family of Beihai. At the very least, it was not much weaker than the general superpowers. In terms of foundation, it was much stronger than the current Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting let Qin Weibai take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years? Until now, thinking of the first time they met in Lin, and a few days ago, Lin Yuxian called Qin Weibai's sister, Li Tianlan was pondering over the endless aftertaste. What? Li Tianlan couldn't help asking. This question was simple and complicated, containing too many things. Among these things, the word trust was particularly sensitive. Why did Lin Fengting trust Qin Weibai so much? Because my sister doesn't care about these things. Lin Yuxian whispered, this is what my father told me. She doesn't care about power and interests. For the dark world, my sister really has no desire. Otherwise, the Samsara Palace must be different today. As long as her requirements are met in the things she cares about most, she is the most trustworthy person. What she cared about most, Li Tianlan thought of Lin Yuxian going to Tianan with him. He seemed to understand something, but he still couldn't help asking, what does she care about most? Your stability. Lin Yuxian's eyes were a little envious. You are what she cares about most. As long as you can be stable, she won't care about anything else. That was why he followed Li Tianlan to Tianan. In the case that the Samsara Palace was doomed to be destroyed, the loose and united Lin clan might not be able to give Li Tianlan much help, but at least it could provide Li Tianlan with a way out. Li Tianlan thought of what Li Honghe had just said. Behind the inexplicable deep affection, there must be a debt. If there was really a debt, what kind of debt could make her compensate so affectionately and persistently? Li Tianlan shook his head hard and threw away the cigarette butt in his hand. He didn't speak for a long time. Lin Yuxian smiled, turned on the music in the car again and drove in silence. There was one thing he didn't say. He now had a choice not to inherit the Lin clan. If he followed Li Tianlan to Tianan and eventually established a branch of the Lin clan in Zhongzhou state, such a result was the best for Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai, the Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Lin clan, and even the Dongqing clan. Lin Yuxian even knew what Li Honghe was worried about. It was said that in the most glorious period of the Li family, there was a beautiful woman who was also very good to Li Guangtu. However, if Qin Weibai went to the Lin clan, there would be no Samsara palace in the world and naturally there would be no old Samsara. Dongqing Rushi, who had been quietly lying in Li Tianlan's arms, moved her body, rubbed Li Tianlan's eyebrows and whispered, "Are you unhappy?" "No." Li Tianlan smiled. "What about you? You haven't spoken since you got in the car. Are you unhappy?" He told Li Honghe to postpone the wedding in front of Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Rushi had a reason to be unhappy. "No." Dongqing Rushi looked into his eyes. "I have something on my mind." Lin Yuxian, who was driving, twitched the corner of his mouth and almost couldn't help laughing. The so-called worry was naturally something that couldn't be said. The daughter of the Dongqing clan was generous, which was too cute. Li Tianlan almost couldn't help it. He touched Dongqing Rushi's hair and chuckled. "What's on your mind?" Dongqing Rushi was a little hesitant. She turned to look at the night sky outside the car window. Under the night sky, the bright moonlight shone on the highway without street lights and it was cold. She looked at the cold moon hanging high in the sky and was lost in thought. "I seem to have heard a name." Dongqing Rushi's eyebrows furrowed in distress. Her eyes were still pure, but at this time, there was a trace of indescribable calmness and clarity, instead of blankness. Chapter 348. When he returned to Huading, it was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. The turbulent mid-July had completely passed. July 21st. There were still 10 days before the final maneuver. Li Tianlan did not return to the Sky Academy but went directly to the East Emperor Palace on the outskirts of the city. It was windy late at night in Huading, and it seemed that rain was coming. The glass palace, which could be said to be quite colorful in the whole of Huading, was silent and cold in the night. The security guard at the gate of the East Emperor Palace opened the door, and the Audi slowly drove into the East Emperor Palace. Looking at the huge palace in front of him, which was mostly made of glass, Lin Yuxian was amazed. The palace was exquisite and magnificent, and the artificial lake around it was clear and charming. In the dark of the night, the light from the glass and the lake reflected off each other. It was as if the lake had risen directly into the sky, or as if the palace had been built in the water. It was ethereal and ethereal without the slightest bit of vulgarity. "What a good place," Lin Yuxian said with a smile. "Is this your lair?" "Sort of." Li Tianlan nodded and smiled. "It's just the beginning. It looks gorgeous on the outside but there's nothing inside." "Nothing?" Lin Yuxian smiled strangely. He was indeed a person who was easy to get along with. He was so casual that he seemed to have no pursuit. Although it was not a long journey from Lin and to Huading, Li Tianlan had already established some good feelings for him. He was such a brother-in-law with great strength but was too lazy to steal any limelight. His motto was to enjoy others' happiness, so Li Tianlan could not help but appreciate him. Li Tianlan responded casually, but he saw Lin Yuxian glancing at Dongqing Rushi with a gloating face. He glanced at Dongqing Rushi with a baffled look. Dongqing Rushi stood beside Li Tianlan, raised her head, and looked at the glass palace in front of her. Following her gaze, he vaguely saw a slim figure standing behind an open window on the top floor of the glass palace. The moment Li Tianlan saw her, the open window was closed, and then the whole palace was lit up. The light shone from the inside out and fell on the artificial lake in front of them. The sparkling lake and the bright palace were like a dream. "Brother-in-law who is inside?" Lin Yuxian said with a smile. The way he called him brother-in-law was really teasing. Li Tianlan coughed as if he was answering Lin Yoshin's question, but his eyes fell on Dongqing Rushi. "It's Yuetong," he said simply. Wang Yuetong had been staying in Huading. In the first 2 days she lived in the hotel, and then she moved directly to the East Emperor Palace. The little princess, who had just turned from a girl to a woman, was very clingy. No matter what Li Tianlan was doing before, she would call him every once in a while. However, since Li Tianlan went to Lin, and Wang Yuetong had not called him or even sent him a text message. But the fact that she was still here spoke volumes. Li Tianlan's eyes were warm. "I know her." Dongqing Rushi nodded and said softly. Li Tianlan thought she would continue to say something, but after the 4 words Dongqing Rushi, there was no more. How could such an attitude be ambiguous? She had no attitude at all. Li Tianlan felt a headache and subconsciously began to imagine the scene of Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong meeting later. The door of the summer palace opened. Wang Yuetong stood at the door, bathed in the crystal light. She wore a moon-white nightgown, looking a little lazy and charming. Dongqing Rushi quietly put her little hand in Li Tianlan's. Li Tianlan felt a little helpless. He took Dongqing Rushi's hand and said softly, "Let's go in. I'll just walk around." Lin Yuxian laughed and whispered, "Although I like crowds, I'm not interested in the scene of domestic violence. This place is good. I'll just walk around. Don't worry about me." Li Tianlan cursed in a low voice, "F***ck your domestic violence," and took Dongqing Rushi to the door. Wang Yuetong stood quietly in front of the door. Her big eyes were full of complicated emotions. She was a little uneasy and a little panicked. Dongqing Rushi looked calmly at the carvings on the marble pillars at the entrance of the summer palace without saying a word. "Why didn't you call me these days?" Li Tianlan whispered, "I thought you went back to Yuzhou." Wang Yuetong shook her head subconsciously and whispered, "If I go back to Yuzhou, will I never see you again?" "How come?" Li Tianlan shook his head and reached out to touch Wang Yuetong's hair. His voice was warm. "Do you know what happened in Lin? Wang Yuetong bit her lip and said nothing. She was the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but she couldn't represent anyone. She couldn't even say sorry to Li Tianlan. This obviously uneasy but unable to say anything was the most embarrassing and heavy position. Li Tianlan sighed and held Wang Yuetong in his arms. He was still holding Dongqing Rushi's hand. Or it could be said that he was held by Dongqing Rushi, while his other hand was holding Wang Yuetong. The posture was a little weird. Wang Yuetong was silent. Dongqing Rushi was still studying the carvings on the pillars beside her. "Tianlan, don't you blame me?" Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlan tightly and asked nervously. At that time she knew what happened in Lin, and almost immediately. Her original sweet and happy little thoughts were also covered with a layer of shadow. In the past few days Wang Yuetong could be said to have lived like a year. Now that she was in Li Tianlan's arms, she suddenly felt relaxed. "Why should I blame you?" Li Tianlan asked with a smile. Wang Yuetong wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. The invincible realm expert who seriously injured Senior Li with one sword in Lin, and was her biological father. More than 20 years after the Li family was destroyed, the Wang family of Beihai showed its position to the remaining Li family for the first time. The two families used to be very close, but now the contradiction was so sharp and obvious. "What happened in Lin, An?" Wang Yuetong hesitated. "What happened in Lin, and has nothing to do with you," Li Tianlan said calmly. "That's the choice of the entire Wang family of Beihai. Yuetong, I don't blame you because you can't decide anything. But it doesn't mean that I don't have any thoughts about the Wang family of Beihai. Between you and me, no one is sorry to anyone, let alone right or wrong. But since we have different positions and what happened in Lin, and happened, I must write it down. To be honest, I don't hate the Wang family of Beihai or your father. But since he chose to attack the Li family, my counterattack in the future will certainly not be peaceful." He paused, looked at Wang Yuetong and continued, "As for you, I thought you would go back to Yuzhou without saying a word. If you really go back to Yuzhou, I won't blame you. If you are still here, I won't blame you. You, a woman, can still persist in the situation that the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family are against each other. Why should I, a man, give up? It's not that I don't have this responsibility. Otherwise you are really blind." "Really?" Wang Yuetong raised her head in Li Tianlan's arms, with tears in her eyes. It could be seen how much pressure and suffering she had suffered in the past few days. "Of course it's true. You are my woman. If you don't let go, I certainly won't let go." Li Tianlan pinched Wang Yuetong's little nose dotingly very gently. Dongqing Rushi squeezed Li Tianlan's hand hard, very heavily. Li Tianlan felt a pain in his palm, and then he remembered that he had ignored the daughter of the Dongqing family. Let me introduce. Li Tianlan bit the bullet and said, "This is Dongqing Rushi and this is Wang Yuetong. Even if you haven't met before, you should have heard of each other." Silence. There was an awkward silence that made people's scalps numb. Wang Yuetong lay in Li Tianlan's arms. Dongqing Rushi held Li Tianlan's hand. The two seemed not to hear Li Tianlan's words, and they didn't even bother to do the most basic courtesy. Li Tianlan subconsciously thought of Qin Weibai. If she was here, Li Tianlan thought about it and he really wasn't sure what kind of scene it would be if Qin Weibai was here. He suddenly looked forward to that scene. Li Tianlan stood for a while. Seeing that the two didn't want to talk, he sighed softly and was about to speak. Dongqing Rushi moved her palm. Wang Yuetong stood up from Li Tianlan's arms and said softly, "I'll prepare the bath water for you. Stay with me tonight. I have something to tell you." A charming blush appeared on her face and she whispered, "I'm ready." The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched and he took a deep breath. Before he spoke, Wang Yuetong continued, "There is a document in the study from the Sky Academy. You can take a look at it when you have time." She turned directly to the bathroom. Dongqing Rushi was still quietly looking at the flowers and plants engraved on the marble pillar. From beginning to end, Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to ignore each other and never looked at each other. Was this considered jealousy? Wang Yuetong's figure disappeared. Dongqing Rushi finally turned her head and looked at Li Tianlan. The light in the hall shone on the door. Her eyes were pure and penetrating. "Will you accompany me tonight?" Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan with burning eyes. She squeezed Li Tianlan's hand, turned her head and whispered, "If you accompany me, I can do what I did for you at my sister's house again." Her voice was low and her face was flushed. Dongqing Rushi. Wang Yuetong. One on the left and the other on the right. Both sides were temptations. Li Tianlan almost collapsed. He forced himself to calm down and said helplessly, "I won't go anywhere tonight. I'll meditate in the study." There were 10 days before the final maneuver. At this time he really should seriously adjust his state. Dongqing Rushi said faintly, "Oh." Li Tianlan took her to the top floor and arranged a bedroom for Dongqing Rushi next to his bedroom. The 3 bedrooms were next to each other. Li Tianlan was in the middle, and Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong were on the left and right. Lin Youxian's bedroom was arranged next to Yu Donglai's. The old man had been living here. At this time he seemed to be meditating, so Li Tianlan did not disturb him. After doing all this, Li Tianlan went to the study downstairs. The document from the Sky Academy that Wang Yuetong said was placed in the center of the desk. It was said to be a document, but in fact it was just a letter. Li Tianlan opened the envelope and read it with no expression on his face. He had read this letter a few days ago, but it was not for him but for Dongqing Rushi. In addition to the relatively formal letter, all the students who were qualified to receive this letter also received a phone call from the teachers of the 2 academies. Li Tianlan's phone call was from Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy. Today was July 21st. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 23rd, Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, would come to Huading accompanied by Gu Qianshuan, the first elder, to talk with the top 50 people on the total credit list of the 2 academies. At that time, all the contents, order and rules of the maneuver would be fully announced. Li Tianlan threw the letter on the table. He sat in the chair and closed his eyes. He did not meditate. He was sleeping. Now was the only way for him to reach his peak state as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.